Every country has its own flavor of motorsports culture. In the case of Australia, it fits just about every stereotype you might have of the land down under. Loud, dangerous, and colorful, the touring car series known as Australian Supercars certainly lives up to its name. But now imagine trying to tame these beasts for a grueling 500 kilometers. You won't have to for long because we're getting ready to watch the major Sandown 500, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and joining me in the booth is Roush Racing driver Joey Atterbury and Ossian Puhaka. Behind the scenes, our director Ryan Bauer, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. While Sandown shares the similarity of many American ovals and being based around a horse racing track, they don't race on the same surface of the animals at all. Let's take a closer look at this unique circuit with our track guide. Welcome to Sandown International Motor Raceway. Located on the east side of Melbourne, Australia, like many older racetracks, it started life as a horse racing circuit. But unlike the numerous ovals that emerged from that trend, this one wound up as a road course. At just over 3 kilometers, or slightly under 2 miles, the 13 turns don't make it look terribly complex. However, once you get into the cockpit, you get a clearer picture that it's anything but simple. Of the various chicanes and 90-degree corners dotting the course, the first turn is one of the more open ones. In fact, both the front and back straights lead into very tough places to overtake. Turn 6 at the end of the back stretch is the more notorious one, with it being scarily fast, blending directly into 7, 8, and 9, as well as offering very little runoff to the outside. Meanwhile, Turn 4 and Turn 12 stand out as two of the most critical corners on the track. Both leading onto long flat-out runs means ideally you'll need to focus on your corner exits to ensure a better lap time. While Australian supercars steal the limelight, the place has also seen a variety of types of racing, from sports cars to open-wheelers and, of course, motorcycles. In fact, the famous Lotus 49 saw victory lane here at the hands of Jim Clark in 1968 in a non-championship F1 race. Local noise restrictions may have limited it to only 5 race weekends a year, but it still offers thrills to the numerous race fans who show up each and every time. Well, Ozzy, this, like many Australian tracks, is kind of its own beast. I've almost never seen a circuit quite like this one.
Aussie track and Ocean, it's a good combination, and yeah, it is quite a unique track in a lot of ways. The layout looks simple when you look at it on a map. However, it can be deceivingly difficult with its high curbs up the inside and the walls that are creeping up close on you. I think we'll see a lot of spins on those curbs when people get anxious trying to maybe overtake, squeeze themselves into a small space on the inside. And reminder, these are V8 supercars. We'll talk more about those soon. They belong here. Sandown 500, one of the most legendary races that you have in the land down under. I think it's going to be a good one, but it's also going to be a deceivingly difficult one, Joe. We'll talk more about that as the race unfolds.
Absolutely. And taking a look at the championship, because now we're really getting down to the end of it. Only 2 races after this one. And Andrew Waring is ahead by 5 points, while Mil Wayne is only 15 points back from him. It's gotten super tight. I mean, you consider that we're talking in the thousands here for the points, and those differences are minuscule. It is practically tied between them. Banfield's not even out of it down there in 4th, as he's only 34 back. You only get a jump when you reach Trevor Vavrovsky down there in P5 at 119 behind. But even behind him, from 5th down to 10th, you have less than 100 points separating all the way down between those guys. So it could be a wild one down to the finish, and we've got a couple tricky races here at the end. Joey, the team standings also something that these drivers fight very heavily for.
And right now, Evolve Sim Sports kind of has their foot down over 500, nearly 600 points over that second place team. That is Grizzly TFR Daytona. And another kind of big old gap there to Satellite Racing in the 3rd place. So I would say that these top 3, they just need to keep doing what they've been doing all season, and they will continue to pull away from the rest. But Udox Oliver in 4th. Then things get tight in terms of a battle for the 5th place between Forged NRG as well as Dog Bear Racing. Only about 100 points separating that battle for the 5th place position. And then once again, down in 8th, Team Mad and Extreme Performance also locked in a nice tight little battle. 500 kilometers here, Joe. Plenty of points are going to be on the line to shake things up.
Indeed. And, well, every race is different in the majors, Ozzy. So why don't we run down the summary here?
Oh, yes, it is late into the season. Let's say we are at the hot point of the season, and we got a pretty straightforward one today. No heat, no separate qualifying in this session, just 161 laps of hard racing. What does that translate to? 500 kilometers. That's why it's called the Sandown 500. You got Australian supercars, meaning V8 supercars, and we got a 60 incident limit if you're being naughty. So you have some room being naughty. That's about 1 incident every 3 laps or so. Open setup. You can adjust those setups, and I suggest you do, because getting the setup right is crucial in this track. 1 spare car as well, so there's a car waiting in the garage in case you bin your own. But please don't do that. That costs time.
Yes, extra pit stops are going to be very, very costly out here today. And we'll see if the strategy is a talking point throughout. Before we get to that, though, we want to mention the sponsor of this series. Make sure and check out the Majors Garage, home of free Baseline Plus setups. Get help from any of the garage coaches 24/7. Sign up now for awesome, affordable monthly subscriptions, telemetry, coaching, and more by simply clicking on our link in the description below. Also, if you use our special discount code, MajorsGSRC, you'll get 10% off. Also, we have a charity at each and every round for this series, and for this time, it is Beyond Blue. Your mental health is important. Some days are better than others, and we all need a helping hand from time to time. Wherever you are in your mental health journey, Beyond Blue will be there to help. Check out our link in the description below if you want more information. Right now, we're in the midst of warm-up with just a few minutes left to try and prepare. At this stage, Joey, especially for a series like this where they are prepping for almost literally a month each and every race, do you think the nerves start to get to drivers as it gets closer?
I would hope not. I would hope that they would start to get more and more comfortable with the more practice laps that they're doing. Remember how many times you've turned laps around this place, and you just have to finally settle into that rhythm, settle into a groove where you can just go out there and drive consistently. You don't need to drive at 11/10ths on the edge, especially at the beginning. And I think the whole point of this warm-up, if I was out there doing some practice, I would go practice the things that aren't usually done. Go practice pit entry, how you stop in the box, practice pit exit. Those are all important things when it comes to a much, much longer race.
And this is probably going to be a pretty punishing race. I haven't driven these newer ones. I drove the previous gen a fair bit, Ozzy, as we're going to ride on board with Carl Burke here to really give you an idea of what it's like around here. But as someone who is a big fan of the Lotus 49, which is usually considered one of the craziest, most difficult cars, I actually considered the old V8 supercars more difficult than these. What do you think? Are these one of the most tough to drive out here?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of things that made the old ones difficult, especially was the lock differential. So you had a completely lock differential both on coast and on power. So those who don't know what that means, and a good reminder for even those who do, is that essentially the left and the right side wheels are not allowed to spin at different speeds. So that means the driving style is going to be very, very different. Usually a lot of the turning comes from those tires spinning at different wheels, so speeds. So it made the handling of the cars interesting. They are heavy cars, not quite as heavy as American NASCARs, for example, but I think like NASCAR on road courses could be the closest comparison to what the old V8 was like in terms of driving, only that you were a bit faster through the corners, and that made it even more difficult. I've done the old Bathurst 1000 on iRacing. I think we did it once with Joni Takanen, who is now driving for Coanda. And we did it with like 2 days practice and didn't sleep at all on the previous night because it started at like 5 a.m. finish time race. So we just decided to hold through it. And yeah, one of the more difficult driving experiences I've had. The new one, a little bit less so. It's more like a GD car in a sense, but as we can see from Ross Banfield, who is leading the practice right now, it's still not easy at all. And as you saw there, those curbs, they can be difficult to navigate. At the same time, if you want to be fast, you have to take those curbs.
Well, maybe not like that. It's Milwaukee completely
not that much.
jumped them. Yeah. But I also, one of the talking points we see a lot in these supercars races, Joey, is most of these Australian tracks are usually very difficult to pass at. What's it going to be like today? I see turn 1 and I see turn 6, and my mind says they look like they might offer something, but what's the reality?
Well, if you watch the supercars in real life, they get their elbows out every single chance they get. I don't think we're going to get quite as sloppy over here. And I shouldn't say sloppy because the racing they put on is some of the best racing in the world. But you're right, you got to be confident on the brakes. And I would say the biggest thing with the setup and the brake bias, make sure the car is stable, because a lot of these brake zones going into some of these corners, they kind of feed into the brake zone with an arcing turn. So you got to have the stability if you're going to make one of those late brake moves. If you go and get on that brake pedal and you jump on it, all of a sudden the car steps sideways. That's exactly what you don't want if you're trying to make it all the way through this 500 kilometers.
So flying down through the twisty turn 6, you can see it sets you right up for turn 9 there. Going to be very difficult through there, especially on the first few laps. Wondering what kind of chaos we're going to get. Also, the other thing about these, Ozzy, a standing start. And hopefully the drivers have practiced for this, because I have a feeling there's going to be a few that maybe haven't practiced enough.
Well, I got a simple trick as someone who regularly used to do series with standing starts. I got a simple trick for a standing start. So first of all, you make sure that you got the you press the clutch, you put the first gear on, you make sure that the clutch is all the way down, then you push the throttle all the way down, and when that light turns green or the lights go out, depending on what kind of series it is, you dump the clutch. And that's basically how you do a standing start. But with these cars, you have to be a little bit more careful. With some cars, you have to sort of slip the clutch a little bit in the start if you're being serious here. You have to slip the clutch with some cars. With some cars, it's more about throttle control and making sure you're not fully on the throttle right from the get-go. And it can be sometimes deceivingly difficult to practice it, because if you drive around a lap and you stop at the start-finish line, well, the tires are going to be a little bit heated up. So it's a different grip than you have normally. You have a little bit more tire pressure as well. So the correct way to practice a standing start is right from the pit exit. But that's not as easy in a crowded session. And it's something people often forget to do. They sort of like, okay, wing it at the start, while forgetting that it's very, very easy to lose a lot of positions in the start. And speaking of start, because it is a standing start, it's important for these drivers to remember that if there is a hole on the start-finish straight right at the race start, never go for that gap, because there's usually a reason why other people avoid going there. That usually means there's a stalled car, so don't go there.
Yeah, let's cross our fingers that we don't wind up with a stalled car at the start on this one, because that'll definitely take out a few people in the process. On board with Schmeier here down through 6. One of the few places with elevation change throughout the lap as well. And down into 9, and there you go. Good example of just how tough it is trying to drive these cars. Ozzy was talking about the tires, Joey, one of your favorite topics. That we're expecting 3 stops. I'm wondering if that's going to allow anybody really any opportunity to try and do something different. I'm not positive it will.
And we got slipped a post-it note pre-race here. It showed that about 40 laps is what most of these cars can make it on the tires. Now, the fuel tank can go a little bit further than that, about 45 laps or so until it runs completely dry. So, Joe, you're right. It might open some opportunities for some strategy, but I don't think it's going to be an opportunity to go completely off strategy.
So it might be pretty straightforward on that front and down to just outright pace if everybody's doing the same thing as the clock ticks down to 0 and we get ready to start here soon for the Sandown 500. The first time that we've raced this race in the majors history, though we have run the supercars plenty of times. And up at the top, Dallas Pataska is going to be starting on the pole for this one with Ross Banfield next to him, hoping to make up ground in his championship hopes. Stephen Vervaien will start from third, as Tom Guest will be fourth. You've got Kevin Hill in fifth, with Oliver Wallen to his outside in sixth, and Edward Shelley seventh. Gary Thomas starts P8 with Jeff Cardamone in ninth and Dennis Cole in 10th. Joey?
And then we have David Gargaro Jr. in 11th, Daniel Salim Howard in 12th, Stuart Elder 13th, Hawkinshow in 14th, Jeff Schmeier 15th, David Baker 16th, Joseph Hamann in 17th, Lynn Kinchlow in 18th, Thor Tulo 19th, and Travis Henderson in 20th.
You got Trevor Waworski starting 21st and Mike Golightly in 22nd. Then it's Ozzy Milwain and such in row number 12. And we are getting ready to start.
Yep, looks like everybody is gridded up early, so as the green flag comes out, we now get started, and it is a very good start from third in line there. Tom Guest is rushing through to try and take second, maybe even first, sticks his nose in, little bit of contact, both of them are going to go wide. Is this going to hand the lead right back to Pataska? It does.
Yeah, Pataska in the 23 was able to keep it on the track while there was a little bit of a sloppy mess in turn number 1, but for the most part, the entire field is able to make it through the first 3 turns.
Joseph Holman, the only one I see completely off course there, and he's going to make it back on. Pataska ahead of Banfield down into turn 6. Tires probably not fully up to temperature quite yet. Who is going to be able to handle this very fast entry over a blind crest as you see them weave through?
Ross Banfield all over the back bumper of our leader as these cars and tires are just getting up to temperature. Something to notice, they jump the curbs extremely well. How often can you jump the curbs and how much can you flirt that limit?
It's going to be a big question mark, and leading the first lap, Dallas Pataska may have briefly lost that top spot, but he grabbed it back with a hurry as Banfield tries to chase him. Guest with that magnificent start from fourth up to third, and I think we had a problem for Stuart Elder, who is into pit lane, and that is a black flag. I'm guessing that's a jump start.
I think so on that one. You're right, he is slowing at the back of the field as we continue here on lap number 2. Honestly, I'm pretty impressed with the pace out front. Dallas Pataska and Ross Banfield, it's almost like they're trying to stretch it out already over the third place Tom Guest.
Ooh, David Baker facing the wrong way, coming out of turn 4, I think it is. And there you can see him just kind of parked up against the arm coat, waits very patiently, does the right thing, and is able to get it going, but it cost him a ton of positions. He almost pulls in front of somebody there.
I tell you what, Joe, this lead battle is good. I think that Ross Banfield really wants this lead back. He got that extremely good start, and he's been hounding our leader ever since. But, I mean, you look further back in the field, and oh my gosh, it is busy. It is a scrum back there for about 10th through 15th.
Yeah, we kind of expected that. It's a big field, 34 cars out there at a track that is not very long, barely over a minute in lap time around here. Is locking up the brakes into turn 1. I think Gargaro Jr. might be in trouble. He's now side by side and sneaking through. Cole is going to move himself up into 10th.
Yeah, and then you got Daniel Salim Howard right behind, as well as Ozzy Milwain trying to take advantage, but it's actually Gargaro Jr. Got a nice run out of that corner, trying to take the fight back up to the 621 of Dennis Cole.
Puts them back to where they started this race. In front of them, though, Hawkinshow managed to gain 5 at the start, so doing an excellent job, really making up a lot of spots early as we go side by side there between Howard and Milwain, but Milwain will hold ahead in 12th.
Oh, he thought about a late move there, and you're seeing the 621 Dennis Cole kind of blink out a little bit. That's just due to a connection issue, and if you are behind, that is really, really difficult to deal with. Not only is it distracting visually on the eyes, but you got to make sure that the car is actually still there when it disappears.
Back on board with Banfield, still very tight to the rear end of Pataska. A little bit of wheel spin, though. Looks like he's going to lose some ground down the backstretch. I think that's going to give us some time here, Ozzy, to maybe take a look at the replay of the start. I'd love to see from Dallas's point of view, because, boy, he had a front row seat of what became a fascinating little tussle for the top spot.
Yeah, so let's see from Dallas Pataska's on board. This is what you want to see at the start. A clear track, a clear track. Take a look at the outside, and that's Ross Banfield on the outside, as well as a very, very late dive tear. And Pataska was just one of the very few ones who was holding on to the inside, holding a very tight line. Whereas a lot of people with cold tires, you want to brake as late as possible coming into turn number 1. They use that tarmac runoff to their advantage. However, due to the car getting unsettled over the curb, they weren't able to get the power down as soon as possible. And as a result of that, Dallas, who took it very easy comparatively into the first corner, was able to reap the reward.
Well, will that make a big difference in the race itself, as it looks like we have another incident? Ooh, almost a cut course there. Guest getting barged out to the side by Vervayan. He's going to be able to make it back on, but not before losing a ton of spots.
Just a tricky little brake zone. I was mentioning how a lot of these arcing corners feed into the brake zone, and you see just a little bit of contact from Vervayan, but they were both in. Just way too deep there. Vervayan going off track himself, and you got to be careful early on. You don't want to dig yourself too big of a hole.
Man, these two are pushing it. We are lap 5, and they are 7.8 seconds ahead of everybody else, and still Banfield is pressurizing the 23.
I'm happy that you caught on to that, because I was noticing it just before we went to that replay. They were about 4 seconds ahead. So you're right. The pace that they are laying down is relentless out there. My biggest question, though, is how much are they using up their stuff doing these 107s early versus everybody else who maybe have been kind of relaxing a little bit on their tires?
The cars behind are currently Kevin Hill and Edward Shelley. They're also relatively close to one of their... Yeah, look at that. I mean, you barely saw them way in the background there on this long shot down the backstretch. So they have been left far behind in the early stages. And it could be, as you say, where they're just kind of waiting and saving. Let's watch. This is how long it takes to get to the next car. Just pausing. There they are, finally. Oh, and they're going to go side by side, giving us a show as we go through. Is this going to go better than Vervayan and Guest? They're going to give each other space into there, and that's going to put Shelley into third.
You were mentioning the tight areas to make a pass. It's going to continue, Joe. There's just not a whole lot of room on this racetrack, so whenever you do make those passes, I have a feeling it's going to be either getting the elbows out or being very close quarters with your rivals.
So on board with Banfield once again, coming up into 2, 3, and 4 here. Oh, man, he is nearly pushing him at this stage. He's getting right on top. Oh, and this is a very good exit. This could be a chance here, Ozzy, as he climbs the hill.
Absolutely could be. So let's see what Banfield does there. Does he move to the inside just yet, or does he want to hold back? No, he goes to the inside, Joe.
That looks to me like Dallas gave that one up.
Yeah.
He lifted on the straightaway. And I noticed that you were pointing to your sheet about saving the tires. Do you think Dallas may be doing a little bit of that here?
Dallas maybe, yeah, absolutely. They realize that maybe they're using the tires more than they want. I mean, let's remind our viewers as well as ourselves. These guys have to make 40 laps ideally on this set of rubber. They've done 7, and if you're noticing it right now, well, this is the last moment to get it under control. Otherwise, you'll be looking at one more stop coming in at lap 32 potentially, and that's what I think Edward Shelley was starting to get a little bit anxious about behind Kevin Hill and why he went for that move. Kevin Hill is clearly not just using all of his pace. I think he has more pace in that number 52 machine. He's just not using it right now. Instead, he's allowing Shelley. Shelley is deciding, okay, maybe I have some more pace. Maybe I can actually use it. And Kevin Hill's happy to just sit behind him and say, okay, if you got more pace, then go for it. And he's he's here, and it's a very difficult track to overtake on. So Thomas and Wallin and Vervayen and so on and so forth are kind of stuck in the pace that these guys are deciding. So we might have an interesting strategic battle as it unfolds, Joe.
Absolutely. Let's not forget a 3-hour race. We could see a bit of change of the track over the course of it as Vervayen now goes by Oliver Wallen. So that's one more down for him. Remember, he lost some spots going off at this very corner, so he's playing catch up. But it is right now just a little past 11 in the morning. We're going to be going straight through the afternoon. That's going to heat up this track something fierce.
You're going to have to pay attention to the track temperature, definitely. Like you said, it's going to increase 20 miles an hour. I'm also seeing on the wind. Thankfully, these cars, you know, they're a tick over 3,000 pounds, so they don't get pushed around too much by the wind. But you're right when it comes to those track temperatures. 3,000 pounds puts a lot of heat through the tires. Got to be careful not to overheat the tires as those track temperatures continue to rise.
That was Howard on screen overtaking Schutz in that blue car that we see. Whoa, and another heavy cut there from Howard. I don't see a cut course penalty, so I guess that was legal. That was a lot farther than I anticipated would be.
You know, it's always, you push the limits, and I think it's always, until they say no, keep going.
And I think we've had an issue with Matt Gelder and somebody else farther down the field as we watch on board with Vervayen here. We'll check on that in a moment, as it looks like we almost had a pass into the corner, forcing him a little bit wide, and indeed, he goes off course, and Vervayen is through.
You know, the easiest pass that you can make on the racetrack is when your competitor makes a mistake, and that's exactly what Vervayen did. He went up there, applied the pressure, and then just the mistake opened the door. Didn't even have to make a move at that point.
So it looks like we got a replay, and this is the Gelder incident with Mueller. So coming up and over, loses control a little bit, and then sadly some netcode seems to have had a part in it as they both get kind of slid off the circuit. And Rob Courtney, now I don't know what happened with Rob.
Just looks like he was out a little bit wide there in turn number 1. Maybe got in too deep as well. And this was that pass. Watch Vervayen look to the inside, and Wallen just takes it in too deep into this final chicane. Goes through the grass. Ultimately, Vervayen, as well as a couple others, were able to grab that position.
So watching Howard here. Maybe this will give us a better view of what exactly happened. Oh, no. There's another separate incident. Howard starting to go deep. I'm starting to think we're seeing drivers experience these tires and these brakes, maybe not cope with the heaviness of this car.
Well,
yeah.
they're going to have to learn to cope with it, Ozzy, because they're going to have to deal with it all day.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the point. Lap 7 we saw Dallas Pataska realizing that maybe he's using too much of the tires. We're now at lap 11. Those incidents were from like laps 8 to 10 when drivers were really starting to feel it. And when the tires get hot, you know this, Joe, you've also got that excellent experience from real life as well. When the tires do get hot, you start to notice it under braking, I think, first and foremost, depending on where you use them. But under braking, when it doesn't quite stop as happily as before, and it's also very easy in a track like this to maybe go a little bit over the limit, so to speak. Hard braking zones, you want to brake as late as possible into those 90-degree corners. You want to use that curve as much as possible. You're not thinking that you're really pushing the car, but you are pushing it constantly and heavily.
I think that if you're talking about wearing the front tires, I think it happens kind of naturally, and you don't even mean to do it with these big, heavy cars. But you lock up tires quite easily going into some of these corners if you don't have the brake bias right. And then you're right, you end up overheating the front. And what happens is it creates an understeer situation that the car doesn't want to turn. Then you go onto the throttle, and all of a sudden it's loose on the exit because you've got too much steering turned into it. It's a very common problem to have, especially in these bigger, heavier cars with an engine in the front and the drive coming from the back. We call it pushy loose, where the car doesn't want to turn at first, and then when you get onto the throttle, it simply wants to turn too much on the exit. And how do you fix that, Joe? It's just a frustration behind the wheel at that point.
Looks like we got a pass maybe for Cole, but he is going to have to stay frustrated with Gary Thomas denying him and shutting the door down into turn 6. So no chance quite yet for the 621 at this stage. By the way, if you want to track your favorite driver and we don't have them on screen at the moment, don't forget we've got live timing and scoring at gsrc.tv. So go check it out over there. Should have a link in the YouTube description to take you right there. But in the meantime, back onto the main straights. We are now getting close to about a third of the way into our first stint. So we're seeing the drivers start to experience the wear and tear and the evolution of the cars as well as the track. Who can manage these very difficult and uniquely regionally specific race cars?
And to talk about kind of the race itself, this first 13 laps, Joe, what I'm seeing from our leaders right here, remember, it was Ross Banfield going up there and applying the pressure to Dallas Pataska early. Well, once he got by, I actually think that Ross Banfield is now setting a pace. They're actually turning laps about 3 or 4 tenths of a second slower than when Dallas Pataska was out front. So I think it's a little bit of cat and mouse. Ross just wanted the clean air.
Well, he's not going to have completely clean air because now lap traffic is becoming a thing. You can see a number of cars up ahead of them at this stage. Gelder's going to be up there. Looks like Gerard Gilbert as well. And somebody goes completely off. That's Adam Preston. Thankfully, is moving by the time the leaders approach.
We're going to have to deal with it for, another 140 laps? I mean, you better get comfortable with it quick, and you better make your decisions in a safe manner. No need to get risky as you go through lap traffic.
Certainly not. Now, Banfield, I believe, is without wins, a win so far this season. I'll need to check his overall stats.
He is. I can confirm.
So, let's see if he can manage to finally get that one, considering he is the highest driver in the points without a win right now.
Well, Ozzy, you can touch on that. I mean, what do you think that is in terms of your confidence going in here if you haven't had the win, but you're leading right now?
I don't think it's an impossibility for him, to be honest. He's only like 34 points behind the lead. Exactly 34 points behind the lead. Also, lest we forget, he's got the most top 5s. So even though he is without a win, I don't think that's affecting his confidence yet. He knows that he can get the results in. At the same time, what I would be worried about if I was Ross Banfield right now, what is Dallas Pataska planning? What is Dallas planning to do? Is he just sitting there, or is he going to attack at some point? It's a very high pressure situation for Ross because he never quite knows when is Pataska going to attack, if Pataska is going to attack. And if he makes a mistake, is Pataska going to be right there and alongside him? So he's going to have to keep checking those mirrors every now and then. And also wonder how easy of a time is Dallas having out there. That's more of an endurance racing thing, more of an endurance sports thing, really. There, if you are leading, you don't have a clear eye on how much the guy behind is struggling, or if they're struggling at all. He could be like whistling a happy tune to himself for all you know, or they could be really struggling to stay behind you and gonna lose their touch in 1 or 2 laps. So that's the kind of things you start to wonder eventually. Thankfully, this Sandown track doesn't really leave you a lot of opportunities to let your mind wander.
On board with Kinchlow here, one of the unorthodox cars, giving chase to a whole pack of them coming down the main straight here. And yeah, there you can see you've got quite a train forming. When the leaders hit that is going to get very interesting in a hurry. So they will want to hope that they will split apart sooner rather than later. This is the battle for 12th with Hakan Schutz up at the top of it.
And you mentioned when the leaders catch this, because they will run up on it eventually, and even if it's not as condensed as this, gotta remember, this is late into the season. These cars that we're watching, they're in their own race 4 position, battling for points. If a leader comes up on them, what happens if they've rubbed elbows earlier in the season? Maybe they aren't so happy about it. I have a feeling that drivers, just like elephants, they have a very, very long memory.
In fact, a little bit of side-by-side there. I think Tolo was trying to pass on Cardamone, but unable to make that stick. That's for 13th here in this group. Is Haken the one that is holding things up is the big question. Are they faster than him, but just can't seem to find their way by a wheel spin there in a big way from Thor?
I think so, yes, Joe. I think that the number 101, the blue 101, is holding them up. You look at the lap times, although that lap time was kind of back on pace, a 109.5, but Haken has been doing 110s in front of this pack, and everybody in front is doing 109s. It just tells me, screams to me, cork in the bottom.
Let's check out towards the back with Travis Henderson. In fact, the very back of this train, all the way down to 19th, if that tells you how big this little cluster is. And in front of him, that was a pretty good run off of Howard on Schmeier. He could maybe have a go at things as we hop on the roof now of Henderson.
These cars are just so dang cool. You know, I think I touched on it earlier. Even the new ones, they're even cooler now, but the big old V8, almost 700 horsepower, 6-speed sequential transmission, like the dash on the steering wheel, all the tools available to change roll bars, differential settings, all of this. And actually just had a car, Gary Thomas was off right in front of this pack here, Joe.
And we've had a big wreck, unfortunately. It looks like Gagaro Jr. and Gary Thomas came together, and for them, Tom Guest didn't have many places he could go. Watch this. Coming down to the final couple turns, gets just knocked sideways, and all three green and black cars become a heap.
It's a little bit messy leaving, as well as just the cars can't quite figure out where to go. And that's tough, Joe. I think I see a little netcode as well when it first got going, but it shows you how big these cars are and how narrow this racetrack is at some points.
Yeah, that's something we haven't talked about a lot. It's just that it's not a very wide track. It's quite old school. And, woof, well, traffic, we said it was going to be a problem. It sure is right now. You can see them having to make some unorthodox lines coming around some of these corners.
Oh, got the pedal to the metal right now. Get to stretch the legs just a touch before they run into that next car. That's Wolf Dietrich Hotto right in front of him, and they're actually catching him in a little bit of an odd area. Looks like Wolf is going to let the leaders to the inside, lets them get by cleanly. Nice job to leave enough room there.
I think these drivers are all very glad this is the modern version of the track. They used to not have that paved runoff to the outside of turn 6. It was grass, and you saw some big accidents in that corner in days past. If you look up YouTube compilations, trust me, there's plenty. Patrick Kopp, in the meantime, was stuck here. That's the second car we've seen do this for, gosh, almost more than a minute, I'd say.
A term that we haven't brought up yet, egg under throttle, EUT, if you will. And what that's referring to is these cars have a lot of horsepower. If you simply put your right foot down, you get a lot of wheel spin coming out of the corner. So how do you modulate that? You slowly apply the gas pedal like there's an egg under the throttle, and you don't want to crack it down there, because if you push it too fast, you get the wheel spin, you don't go anywhere. You need to easily modulate onto that throttle to get the forward drive, get the traction.
Well, I think, Joey, my egg was always boiled. That's the problem.
Back to watching our leaders. But Joey, I'm very curious, because we've mentioned that these kind of have a similarity to NASCAR stock cars. And we've seen some of the supercar drivers actually come over and try them, some recently with quite good success in the case of Van Gisbergen. But with these cars at this track, do you think since this series sees a lot of different types of drivers take part, and some of them are oval drivers, is that going to suit them well, trying to adapt to this, or is this too alien?
I think the track, no. The car, yes. It drives very similar to, like you were mentioning, a U.S. stock car, if you will. However, it's better, right? It's just more designed for road racing. However, the bones, the skeleton, the idea of it is still the same, with a big V8, a rear drive, and pretty much a spec car underneath, so everything is all the same. The track, totally different. You know, it's not an oval track. You can't bring any of that roundy round knowledge here. It translates a little bit to the car, but you definitely have to get used to still rolling onto the throttle and being careful with those pedal inputs around a road course.
Still watching this battle for what is now 11th, actually. We've lost someone in front of Schutt there, who has gotten himself now up into, or almost up into the top 10. He's got to get a ways up to Gagaro Jr., but that accident that we saw David have before didn't slow him up enough, apparently. Going to watch from Vavrovsky, who's right smack dab in the middle of this pack. That is the car of Kinchlow just in front of him currently, and he's being chased by Jeff Schmeier, but they're all going to stretch out down the backstretch.
Jeff Cardamone here chasing Håkan Schutt and the 11th place. So Håkan's doing a really good job over there. We mentioned he's kind of the cork in the bottle, but he's not making any mistakes out there, and that's the important part. You need to run your pace, and your pace is whatever it is. It's up to everybody else to get around you.
As long as you can block out that distraction, rip off the mirror, and just drive your own race, absolutely. And right now the 101 has been doing that pretty well, I'd say, but it's still early in the race. We're only halfway through the first stint. I can only imagine, having, like I said, driven the old cars, just how difficult it must be by this stage, because I know the old ones certainly required you to baby those tires a lot.
Yes, I think you're going to still have to baby them. You're right that the newer cars, they are easier in terms of driving and being able to get the most out of it and stay consistent. But one thing's for sure, whether it's an old car or a new car, you need to keep it clean out there. And there's a few cars out here with quite a bit of damage.
I was just going to say, speaking of NASCAR, we're seeing, a lot of battle damage on plenty of these cars here today, but we kind of expected that things would get rough out here as we are on board with Pataska once again, chasing Banfield. He's been sticking with him. He's let him have it. What kind of psychological games are happening? Is Dallas just waiting and letting Ross kind of lead the way like we hinted at earlier? Or is he genuinely struggling to stay up with Ross Banfield and had to let him go? I guess we'll be able to tell maybe a little later in the stint.
They've both picked up the pace again down to the low 108s and see what they do as they cross the stripe this time, but that's a little masked. They're having to deal with a lot of lapped traffic. I really do feel that Ross Banfield was pushing Dallas Pataska early on in terms of the pace. He really wanted to go out there and lead. Once he got out in front, he's kind of been running his own pace in terms of what he needs to do to save his tires, to hit his fuel number, whatever that is. And I think that Dallas Pataska is plenty comfortable in second following Ross.
It does give me that impression, and Pataska does come from the oval side quite well. So he's a driver that's probably going to be used to dealing with these big, heavy cars. This is go lightly, and those are our leaders that are approaching him right now. So Mike is currently down in 43rd, or no, not 43rd position. There's not 43 cars, 20th position. So that's how many they've lapped already here. Almost half the field have been demoted behind the leaders, and he's causing a bit of problems for Ross Banfield. Thankfully, it looks like they did not actually make contact, but boy, he got close.
If they didn't, there might have been some fingers out the window or maybe some Italian hand signals as they were going by each other.
I'm going for first, he says.
What do they do the American way or the British way with the two fingers? That's what I was wondering.
Well, in these cars, it's tough to be hanging upside down and do that out the window, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. There's the eventual Australian jokes. Yes, they had to come out somewhere. As we carry on here on lap 25, and Pataska still holding on to him in spite of the traffic, making sure that he can't get away. It is up to 20 seconds ahead of Ed Shelley and Stephen Verveyen now at this stage. Verveyen back up to fourth, despite having an off earlier on. Has he cost himself potentially a better finish? Maybe not a win, but maybe a third is still on the cards.
Joe, it's rather frustrating sharing the commentary booth with you because I feel like when I have a talking point, you literally say it like 30 seconds before I get on the mic here. But you're right. Vervaien's having a great comeback drive. I think he's going to be able to pick off Edward Shelley here in the next handful of laps. Ross Banfield, Dallas Pataska, amazing what they're doing. They have put a third of a lap on the entire field so far, or I should say on third place. They've lapped up to 20th so far. So the outright pace that our front runners are setting, absolutely grueling.
Really impressive what they've been able to do. I have to go and give a watch to the Pacific region running of this race. For those not familiar, the Majors has two regions, the Atlantic that you're watching now, and the Pacific that takes place on Saturdays to try and give way to some parts of Europe as well as Asia, and, of course, Australia has been some of their main competitors over in that region. So I expect this one was quite popular, and I'm sure, considering they have a lot of Australians that take part in the official racing in this car here on iRacing, they probably had some heavy hitters.
The bigger the pool that you have, the better. You know, you kind of get to see the best of the best out there, and that's exactly what the Majors does. But one thing I'm noticing on the racetrack here, Joe, lap 27 of 161 is it looks like we're going to get a GSRC replay. This is Jeff Cardamone here in the number 314. Oh, getting pushed out a little bit wide there. I didn't see too much heavy contact, but all of that traffic thankfully doesn't pull back out onto the racetrack. But what I was getting to, it's coming up on potential fuel window being open.
That's a good point. If you want to try and do something different here, who tries to pull the trigger there? Thankfully, that spinning car was offline after they got completely around, so everybody was able to try and dodge around them in the end. Lap 27 at this stage. Again, 45 laps we think is the max. So if you do the math backwards, who is going to try and do it in reverse to see if they can pull a blinder and maybe get some clear air? But less and less I am seeing clear air out on the track. It's becoming a conveyor belt out there.
The conveyor belt, but I know that 45 lap is the green flag fuel window. Ozzy, you had, what did you call it, your tactician board out earlier? Maybe is that the Andy Reid Waffle House menu? What is the earliest stop somebody can come in?
What is a Waffle House? No, it's the tactics board, yes, that I have out right now. So the earliest that makes sense is 32. 32 makes sense if you want to go for the 4-stop / 5-stint strategy. Then you come in at lap 32, you go 32 all the way until last stop and leave it as a 33 lap last stint. Of course you can go 1 or 2 laps, give or take, with that, but that's if you want to like really short with the fuel and most importantly short with the tires, and that's gonna look like an appealing option maybe for some of the drivers who are struggling with the tires. I'm seeing some of the lap times dropping, especially in mid-pack. Could be just congestion, could also be a result of just, you know, wanting to maybe come in early now that they know that it's effectively it's possible. But we're expecting normally drivers to come in at around lap 40. That's what you guys been talking about. That's what we are expecting them to do. And indeed, Michael Lightley is one of the drivers in the pit lane right now. So he's going for that short fuel strategy actually already at lap 29. So 28 for him. So it's a bit short.
I also see Gelder in there, Michael Hogg, but I'm not sure if this is expected for them or if they had some sort of issue that they now need to take repairs as the cars continue to hop over these curbs. Even the leaders really taking as much as they dare. Yes, it looks like both Hogg and Gelder had a standard stop and they're back out. So about 37 seconds for Matt. Michael had a 43.
I always have to scratch my head and kind of question the strategies that go on here in sim racing, because being in the real world, you have banter back and forth between the drivers screaming at the crew chief saying, hey, I need new tires. I want them right now. And then the crew chief says, no, you have to make it to lap 40 in order to make our strategy work, as you see Ross Banfield and Dallas Pataska squeeze and buy some lap traffic here. But in sim racing, you don't have a crew chief to yell at them. It's pretty much just the driver in there saying, I need new tires. And how often is that mind, that little voice on the shoulder, going to win versus getting to that fuel number?
Mom says I can't have candy yet, unfortunately. So Ozzy Milwane is in. Now, this is interesting. That's one of our front runners who looks like he's doing an alternate strategy. And he's up on the jacks and taking tires and I assume fuel right now. So we'll see where he cycles back out. Go lightly returned 28th, and he's 2 laps down, but I think he was already 1 lap down when he pitted. Our leaders are actually just getting ready to lap the pitting car of Ozzy Milwane right now. So he will lose a lap, but there's no pit stops, or excuse me, no full course cautions in this race. So he doesn't have to worry about being trapped a lap down, but he will have to worry about those blue flags coming up behind him.
Remember how you were mentioning the conveyor belt? Well, our leaders have run up on it. They are officially on the back end of it, and I'm not so sure if they're looking at it as a conveyor belt. It looks like one of those treadmills with Legos on it that they got to go around.
And, yeah, they overtake Michael Hogg there, one of those that we said just pitted, along with Jeff Cardamone, who has not pit yet, so he's the highest car who is a lap down. And yet more and more keep coming. Oh, and Håkan, unfortunately, has gone off the circuit. He was having such a good time holding people back, but no more. They've all slipped by. Did he get help or what? No.
Yes, 2 deep. We've seen that be a trouble corner already this race, and I have a feeling it's going to continue to be a problem. Even like Ozzy was saying, once you start to overheat those front tires, it can be trouble to get them back. The lockups can happen quite easily, as Joe. Looks like we got Ross Banfield and Pataska still trying to get by this lap traffic.
Barely left enough space there for somebody, and had to go up on the curb. Thankfully did not spin the car. Was trying to figure out who exactly that was that just about got shoved into the grass by our leaders. They got to be careful. It's not just in hoping they're given space, but they've got to give space themselves.
You have to play on the same playground. Remember, everybody's out here all racing on the same racetrack. It doesn't matter if you're the leader or if you're way back there a couple laps down. You still have to get along.
Well, coming through these tight little corners once again, the drivers now find themselves in the thick of things once more, but getting close to the potential pit strategy soon. Who is going to blink amongst the leaders other than Ozzy Milwane? Anybody else going to follow him through? Will someone try to go just a bit early on the traditional 3-stop strategy? Who else is going to go for 4 here today as we get ever closer? Remember, these laps are short, so yes, we've got 7 to go, but that's a little more than 7 minutes.
Oh, Edward Shelley a little bit deep into the first chicane. That's going to open the door for Vervaen. He gets a nice run out of the final turn. This is for 3rd place, 4 position. The yellow car, Steven Vervaen, has the inside line going into turn number 1. How deep on the brakes can he go? But look at this. Edward Shelley, very aggressive on that turn 1 braking marker, but now runs wide. Vervaen going to do the unorthodox over-under.
Nicely done there, and Shelley is now up into 3rd, or Vervaen is up into 3rd rather, but 26 seconds behind Dallas Pataska. That's a monster gap that he's got to make up there. In fact, Pataska is just getting ready to start the next lap already to tell you how far ahead he is of the number 8. So not expecting him to catch him back up, but you never know. It's a long race, and usually when we have these supercars and the majors, it is a bit of a race of attrition. So keeping it on the black stuff, which Thortella does not do there, is going to pay dividends.
Actually has to give up a couple positions there. Kinchlow as well as Howard was able to sneak by, and you don't have to look too far back from this pack. You see our leaders with that bright green grille, as well as Dallas Pataska giving chase. They've caught this 14th place battle. Now,
we've got some interesting storylines going on in the championship as well. I mentioned Andrew Warren, just some clarification on that. Unfortunately, he will not be in contention for the championship because he has retired from SimRacing. So he will eventually lose this lead, although he'll still finish well high up there. So Pataska theoretically is in the best position right now, points-wise, but he's in second on track. Banfield's trying to play catch-up. He's got a ways to go. He needs some good results over Dallas, who could be points racing, as we see some more side-by-side now between Vervaen and Shelley, but Vervaen will remain ahead in the meantime. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Ozzy Milwane is the one in the middle of Ross and Dallas points-wise. But remember, Ozzy's gone off strategy here, so he could be a bit of a surprise come the end.
Be interesting to see how it all plays out, because this is still early days in the race. Off strategy, the way that I think about it is that it opens more potential doors for you later in the race to do different strategy options. We're just going to have to see if that's going to come to a benefit or if that potential off strategy is not going to play out.
So as we come down through Turn 9 once again under the Penrite Bridge before they get ready to finish the lap. Just one more chicane to go here. Our leaders still continue to stretch ahead, but that's ahead of third place. Ozzy, you're looking at the timing tower. What's going on down with on-track, Ozzy?
Yeah, so, well, I'm always off track. So, 114 Ozzy Milwane, 108.51 was his last lap. Compared to leaders, just refreshing, 109.1, 109.0 for those guys. Let's see when Ozzy gets his next lap done, what will it compare to? But he's running half a second faster than our leaders right now on track in terms of pure raw pace. That being said, Link Kinchlow, by the way, is on the pit lane, but Ozzy Milwane, 108.3. He's right now got 13 seconds up the road ahead to Gary Thomas, so he's got a good gap for himself too. So I'm thinking tactical decision. Someone surely must have said to him, or it was pure luck, that, you know, if you pit right now, we get a good window, we get a clean window to these cars ahead, you can run on a clean track, you can run faster lap times. So what that translates to, well, he's gonna have to make an extra stop at some point, surely, with this tactic. At the same time, he's gonna be able to run half a second, 6/10, maybe 7/10 faster than our leaders right now. And crucially, he's lapping faster and just about everybody else on the around the positions he was at. So from 5 to 10, he's gonna leapfrog those guys on strategy, at least initially. We'll see how that translates towards the end of the race, but looking very interesting for Mr. Milwane.
Kind of think of that as the Schumacher strategy. Wasn't it France one year? He did 4 stops or something ridiculous.
Hungary 1998.
That's it. Yeah. Just blasted through and kind of went about things in an unorthodox way, but he could run flat out and as hard as he wanted, just making a bunch of stops and outran everybody as our leaders sliced their way down through turns 6, 7, and 8 once again. Banfield caught behind Tom Guest. This is 9th place they have lapped. Now, they've lapped a couple cars that have pitted so that it's somewhat skewed, but it's not a huge amount. They have just chewed through the field here already.
I think they're going to be able to take a breath once they get past this black and green car of Tom Guest, because you're right. They went through the conveyor belt. They've gone through the entire field. They've got nearly 30 seconds on third place. When you do a minute around this place, that means the other third place car half a lap behind. You got to go all the way across the racetrack. Now, I'm not sure what the pit lane delta time is, but they're to the point that they're potentially putting a pit stop on the rest of the field.
Joey, I can answer your question. It is around 1 lap exactly. Pit lane times have been around 1 minute 2 seconds, 1 minute 3 seconds. 1 lap is 1 minute 8 seconds.
Well, there you go. That answers the question. So they still got to put a little bit of time in it, but I'm happy you brought up that pit stop, Ozzy. Joe, if I was looking at this lap 40, we're right in that time if you want to try a little bit of an undercut or an overcut, but still kind of hit that fuel number.
Exactly, yeah. So we're 3 laps, going to be 2 laps very quickly from the 40 lap mark. So Neither of them do take it at this stage, Pataska versus Banfield, but we have to wait a long time before we see Vervayan come around to see if anybody back down there goes through. Based on the pace that we are seeing, though, I am almost certain that we're going to see only Banfield and Pataska left on the lead lap by the end of this race.
Yes, I think so, because if it continues at this pace, I mean, right about halfway, yeah, they're going to be lapped up inside of the top 5. So it'll be interesting to see. Lap traffic, it never goes away, though. You got to be on your toes every single lap out here. And honestly, Joe, if I was one of the 2 lead cars, I wouldn't even look at lap 40 as a pit window. I would try to stretch it as far as I can, especially if you're running so strong early.
I agree. I think the way that they haven't had much trouble, the traffic, though it's held them up, everybody's in the same boat. So might as well just try to give yourself more wiggle room at the end, I suppose, is the way to think of it.
That's a good way to think of it, yes. It just opens more doors. You know, if you do 40, 40, 40 in terms of the laps, you're kind of locked into that mathematically. While if you stretch it early on, it just gives you more options to short pit or do other things when it comes down to that last stop.
Love seeing the onboards of these cars as we watch from Pataska once again. Been seeing a lot of that rear wing, and he let him by very early on and relative to the length of this race, but he's been sitting behind him. So I still say that Dallas is planning something. He's got a plan ahead of him and is just waiting for things to unfold. As we got another car in pit lane, that's Gary Thomas, who was involved in that 3-car wreck that we saw earlier on.
And we are on lap number 40 right here as these leaders round out of one of the final turns here, come through this narrow little chicane. Let's see if either one dives to pit lane this time. And if they don't, it looks like they are going to extend it. Now, Ozzy, bring in your tactical board again. What can potentially come if you extend the stint?
Well, it can be a lot of games, because when I'm looking at the leaders, especially Banfield and Pataska, they are matching each other in terms of pace all the way through. And they just haven't been able to really find a gap between each other. It's been around that half a second, under half a second mark all race long. So I think both are going to try running as long as possible. They don't want to be separated. You don't want to blink first. So if you run around max fuel, which is 45, you run 45 again and 45 again, you're going to have a 26 lap last stint. So we're potentially looking at around lap 135 until we see who is going to be able to save more fuel on that penultimate stint. And ultimately, it might be decided on who has shorter stop last time around. So that could definitely be a strategy that plays into this, and we'll see a classic sort of endurance racing tactic where you don't think about the tires, you just think about extending that stint as long as possible.
Ooh, we had a pass for 13th, but Jeff Schmeier has had to give it up because he just got a slowdown penalty for cutting the course. But this was into turn 1 that he made it happen. This is on the backstretch that we're seeing. And actually, no, he got another position even coming out of there. So initially he was passed, and oh no, excuse me, that is Hoken that actually managed to go right back by him. And here's where, yeah, you can't take that line. And now Jeff Schmeier has had to slow up to give that time back. But he did make a good dive past Hoken into turn 1 to eventually get there. And Tullo actually also got overtaken in that maneuver.
Now, you'll see the drivers really abusing that curbing section where we saw get that penalty there. Now, there has to be a line drawn somewhere, and typically when you go all 4 wheels off of the racing surface, that is deemed pretty much out of bounds. That's when you get the slowdown penalty and have to give up the track position.
Kevin Hill and Oliver Wallen now are the latest 2. to have gone into the pits rather. Yes, they're technically off course, but just my mind was still on that topic. And they are taking their service. Those are, again, two of the drivers that are high up the field. But it does look like we're seeing drivers, Ozzy, doing what we were just talking about and just trying to extend this.
Yeah, Wawrowski's in the pit lane as well as we speak, and Jeff Cardamone from further back is in pit lane as well. Looking at those pit stop times, they are still running. Kevin Hill, I think 59.5 lane time, 40-second pit stop. Ozzy Milvain a 45-second pit stop. So it's interesting to see these variations in terms of pit stop times. It could be under fueling for some of the drivers. Those are not enough of a difference between a tire stop or no tire stop. I mean, nobody's going to be running the old tires anyway. So Kevin Hill maybe taking a little bit less fuel, 5-second faster pit stop. As a result of that, is able to jump ahead of Ozzy Milvain in terms of fuel stop, but also his fuel stop was shorter because he was stopping later on. So that's one of the things we got to remember as well. But yeah, a lot of drivers jumping into the pit lane, definitely going to be looking like a conservative strategy race where very few of these guys are running the aggressive strat, so to speak.
Still back to Pataska once again, chasing on Banfield, getting a lot closer than what we've been seeing before. Is he starting to feel like it's time to threaten? Because of the pit stops here? We've got one more lap before they are at the end of the stint, as far as we've been told, and have to come in because there's just not enough fuel in the car to keep going. And they've been running a fast pace, so I doubt they've been saving unless they just have the entire package and are both fast and light with the right foot.
A couple points here. Ross Banfield has slid out wide in turn number 1 on a few different laps, and I know that these tires are getting pretty old, but just keep that in mind for later in the race. And now we've got both leaders hitting pit road simultaneously. So yes, Joe, end of lap 44, coming to lap 45, that is the fuel window when it runs dry.
In a very narrow pit lane, it looks like, from that onboard. Thankfully, they're able to find their way to their stalls without problem. They both hit them. We saw a little bit of variation before. Will there be one of them under fueling just slightly to try to get the track position? Maybe Banfield to run away from Dallas, since he's been hounding his rear wing for quite some time. They're about halfway through the stop, so we still have to wait a little longer to really find out the answer to the question, as others behind them already take off.
And you gotta be good on the launch. Watch for any lap traffic as it's coming down pit road. This is Steven Vervine in the yellow car also hitting pit road from that third place position. But Joe, this is pretty much another standing start when they drop the jack.
Right, and Banfield out first, still just barely ahead of Pataska. Looks like they are just about bang on, about 0.4 of a second difference.
Yeah, I think Pataska was able to pretty much be right on the bumper as they came off of the pit lane speed limiter. And you got to remember, old tires were hot and greasy. Cold tires, well, they are just as dangerous.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we saw it last time on the first lap, a number of drivers struggling to get through some of the corners as they got them up to temperature. Looks like we've got the other drivers coming in now, except for Dennis Cole, who has stayed out. Oh, wow. Okay, so he is up to lap 45. So is Henderson. Hokenschutz also still out there. And Tulla, a few drivers trying to go absolutely as long as possible.
Now, Ozzy, is there any way that going one extra lap to 46 can really be a benefit? Because from what you told me, that last stint, it's still going to be, north of 20 laps.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shorter final stop. That's the benefit. So whenever you are coming to the last pit stop and you've been able to extend your stint 1 lap longer, maybe you're able to do that the next time around and the next time around as well. So you're going to be stopping 2 or 3 laps later than everybody else on the final stop. That's going to be about a couple of seconds worth of fuel, not more than that. Definitely. These cars are fueling fast. It can be a slight advantage, but I think most importantly, he's getting the lead laps in. So, I mean, Dennis Cole was leading this race. Nobody can take that away from him. Sponsor's going to be happy. Good.
Hokenschut also in pit lane now. So David Baker needs to stop, but he's just starting lap 45. So is Jason Wallet and Hoto here. So those are some of our drivers a little farther down, but we anticipate from what we've seen, 45 is correct in being the absolute maximum. So drivers will only be able to get to that far, which means lap 90 will be the farthest we'll see anybody go before they take their second stop. Watch out for that number. Last couple just finishing that up, but your leaders, now that we've seen the pit stop cycle through, is Banfield over Pataska. Vervayan is in third, and Hill is in P4 with Ed Shelley back in fifth. I think Kevin Hill jumped Shelley in that pit cycle.
Yes, he did. Kevin Hill was actually right on the back of that third place battle when Vervayan was able to get up around Shelley. So Kevin Hill in the number 52 having a good run. You know, might not have started out like a rocket ship out there, but having consistent pace as of right now. And something else to notice, if we continue on this pace, the drivers, they're looking at that lap 50 mark coming up. That's when they can finally take a breath and say, all right, I've got the first chunk of the race done. I've experienced my first pit stop. You can really take that big exhale and settle in.
One thing that we have to remember is that Milwain and Hill both racing for Evolve Sim Sport, currently running in 5th and 6th, and they are the team that is leading the team's championship. So they are sitting in a good spot here. Obviously going to lose to a couple of the other teams. I believe Banfield is unorthodox, but unorthodox has not been racing as well as they had in previous seasons. For a brief moment, they were kind of the team to beat and just had leapt up towards the front, but have slipped up a little bit this season. Instead, it's Evolve Sim Sport, who have basically been running away at the end of this season, continuing to extend that points gap. Satellite Racing for Dallas Pataska there, holding on to the UDOX car, trying to keep him honest.
It's only been, oh, look at that. Dallas Pataska getting in deep. A big lock up there. Is he able to keep it on the track? That was the first mistake we've seen out of the number 23 car. I was just about ready to comment on how consistent they've been, but that was the first one. He's lost a little bit of time.
Interesting, and that's only on lap 3 on the tires. Surely they're up to temperature by now, but for some reason that's caught him out just a little bit, and now he has to make up about 1.3 seconds to get back up to Ross Banfield. Not the worst thing in the world, but that definitely gives some breathing space to our leader. As don't know if we could see it, but off to the side of the track, Patrick Kopp was there in the grass. He's able to get the car going. Whoa, that was a little bit awkward. And, well, they're back together once again.
Yeah, that was incredibly close. And actually, Dallas Pataska is able to reel in the leader just a little bit more. He's got a lapped car between himself and Ross Banfield, though. See if he's able to clear him. He's trying to get to the inside. Joe, this is exactly what Dallas doesn't want to see. He wants to stay in touch with our leader.
And guess who Gelder races for? That's an unorthodox car. Now, they don't like the cars playing silly games out there. Oh, but he's going to spin right in front of him, and that's going to release Dallas Pataska, as Gelder, I think, kept it out of the wall just barely, but certainly had a scary moment. But that said, Matt is not obligated to jump out of the way. It's not F1 blue flag rules. Let's see what Dallas saw.
You know, it looks like a little bit of rear lockup actually going into the corners. I've seen a lot of the rear glow from the brake disc, a lot of rear bias being run in these cars today.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get back. But for now, we're going to take a short break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll return with more racing here for the majors, Sandown 500.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Anybody really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
Welcome back to Sandown International Motor Raceway. We're here for the Sandown 500 in the majors, 9th round out of 11. And Ross Banfield continues to lead this race. However, over the break, there is some more drama for Dallas Pataska. He already had an off, and then on top of it, Adam Preston was a little bit in his way, according to Dallas. Let's see how this all went down into the final couple corners here as he tries to get himself onto the front stretch. Does look like Adam maybe, Joey, took a lot of curb, and that maybe is what put Dallas into him.
That's exactly what happened. Adam got into the curb. He had to check up, and then Dallas Pataska got into the back of Adam Preston there. So just a little bit of a chain reaction, but that was big news for our second place runner because he was already hunting down Ross Banfield, trying to close that gap from the leader. And you don't want to be running into too many cars when you're chasing the lead.
Now, we talked about the brakes, and you can still see them glowing at the back of the car. And Joey, one thing I find interesting is while iRacing does not model brake failure per se, it does model the brake heat, and that can also heat up the tires themselves. I'm wondering if that is another thing contributing to certain drivers struggling today.
It potentially could be. When I see those rotors glowing, I look at the front to the rear. How much glow are they evenly? Is one more than the other? And when I look at the cars today, I'm seeing a lot of rear rotor glow. What that tells me, a lot of brake bias shifted towards the back. These drivers are trying to get the cars to turn in more on the corner entry. But when you do that, you also have to be really careful. We've also seen a couple lockups. If you go too far on that rear brake bias, it starts to become unstable.
So with Lynn Kinchlow now, watching him try and chase Vavrovsky. This is for 11th spot. They've also got Gary Thomas in behind them. 3-car battle right now between this trio. Onto the back stretch, a little bit of a wiggle from Trevor. Kinchlow going to see if he can use that to his ability, best of his ability to catch up, but doesn't look like he's quite there.
Sometimes it's about playing the patience game, and one thing kind of to expect as this race goes on, the cars with similar pace, they find each other on the racetrack and they run in these groups. It's not necessarily that they're battling really, really hard, but they're just all running a near identical pace. And when you have that, you have to be careful of the mistakes being made on the racetrack versus necessarily the aggressive moves.
Again, a reminder that if we are not covering the driver that you're most interested in, we've got live timing over at gsrc.tv, and you can check on exactly where everyone is at all times during the race and see how your favorite is doing. But right now, Lynn Kinchlow has probably not got Vavrovsky up as his favorite because he's been a little bit stuck behind him.
Is that how that works? You only get friends if they're helping you along on the racetrack, and when they're in your mirrors, all of a sudden, I'm okay. I don't want to see you anymore.
Exactly. Well, as they fly down the backstretch one more time, Trevor will continue to hold on to that spot. So let's look from Gary Thomas's point of view here in 13th position. Again, these are already cars that are a lap down. We only have 7 of them left on the same lap as the leaders.
And soon we're going to be talking about which cars are 2 laps down, which is coming up to about the 21st places. You're right, Gary Thomas here. I always love the bright colors, but inside these cars, you can see those window banners quite clearly. Do you think that's a distraction, having the Gravedigger scheme in there?
I mean, that's more of a you question than me. I haven't gotten to be inside of a race car.
I mean, I've always found bright colors to be a little bit distracting. Maybe not so much on the roll cage because it's an integral part, but that comes into sunlight. So you have different colors being projected onto your visor depending on which lap you're on or what part of the racetrack you're at.
I've never really thought about that. I wonder if the drivers here who have the eye candy turned up are concerned about certain things such as that. We're actually just past noon now and getting ready to close in on the 60 lap mark, but we're only expecting a small handful of drivers to try and pit on this one. So far, most have been going pretty traditionally as there's a big move on the inside and Thomas has to clatter over the curb to avoid going into the side of Lynn Kinchlow. It was a valiant effort, but it was for naught.
It's still busy though here. Look at how many cars, and there's one off the track here. Here's going to be more opportunities to get by some cars. Kinchlow still chasing Vavrovsky. Gary Thomas still in tow as well, but I'm still amazed. We have a lot of cars a lap down, a lot of cars 2 laps down, but it doesn't seem like the traffic has lightened up at all.
No, it's still that conveyor belt out there, just constant cars everywhere you go. And it's definitely a bit more mixed up now. There's some drivers that are a lap down. There's some that are 2 laps down, 3 laps down that you're coming across. So that, if anything, Ozzy, that kind of, I guess, mixes up in a bad way for some people, because maybe you're looking to lap somebody, but then someone's lapping you at the same time.
Yeah, so it's you get that situation where you got a 3-car battle and all 3 cars are on different laps, so you have to consider things. At the same time, no strict blue flag rules, as mentioned earlier. So you just gotta make your move first, and well, you would think that, okay, if you're behind somebody who is a lap down on you, and you got somebody bearing down on you that is a lap up on both of you, you would think that, okay, you make your move first, and then you both let the leaders by. Whereas often the best strat is to let the leader by first, and then sort of follow the leader as they make their move on the car next to you. That way you can use it to your advantage, where the leader is usually a leader for a reason and they know how to make that move. They've been lapping cars more than you have, and then you can just follow through on the same hole. If considering or trusting that the guy is gonna see that both of you are going for that move. And that's what I was most worried about when Banfield and Pataska were running right behind each other for the entirety of the first stint, effectively, and the start of the second stint, is the difficulty of the lap driver seeing that there's 2 cars coming instead of 1. You can see it on the relative screen, sure, but it's sometimes very difficult to see that on your mirrors, and we have a spinner, that's Cardamone.
It's going to get going. This is in 2 and 3. That's always a really tricky part, so let's see how he got there. So we right on board. Ooh, already a lockup in front of him. We've been seeing that a lot today, using up that exit. Oh, he got help in a big way. Someone tipped him around.
Yeah, that's a blue car. Looks like a blue and black car out there. I'm not exactly sure who that was.
Håkan, maybe?
Is it 101? Yeah, it's Håkan Schött. So I'm just glad to see that Håkan got in the shot, but that's not the way he wanted to be in the pictures, probably.
And I have to say, Cardamone, though, did not slam on the brakes and definitely let it roll across the racing line. Thankfully, nobody hit him, but that was a scary moment for whoever was coming up upon that car that suddenly was right where he wanted to be. And now they both get going once again. Now, we've been watching Ozzy Milwain a little bit here, back up into 4th. And as we just mentioned before that craziness happened, it should be pitting soon, but hasn't pitted yet. And technically still has about, looks like 14 laps if he wanted to, for some reason, switch up strategies, Ozzy, and go long on fuel.
Yeah, so the standard is to, if you go 32, 32, and etc., he's gonna be pitting at around lap 64 if he wants to go back to that original strategy, sort of align himself more with it. So I think he's gonna run that second stint a little bit longer. He pitted on lap 29 the first time, lap 30 the first time around. So it's gonna maybe extend this one a little bit, make it a 33, 34 lap stint, so he can return back to that 32 strategy. Alternatively, he's gonna do some wizardry and gonna maybe run shorter stints from here on out, because technically it is possible to run a short first stint and then run 45s all the way to the finish from here.
That was Daniel Howard that was off track that we saw there. Let's take a look at the replay. I think this was on his own. He does have Preston behind him right here, but yeah, car just refuses to turn. He's gonna at least, I thought he saved it there, Joey.
Yeah, no, big old tank slapper, and you saw how much those rear brakes were glowing, and that's a classic sign. Actually, he's in trouble again right now on the racetrack. Runs out wide as we catch some more pictures of Ozzy Milwain. Yes, trying to take the battle up, but as well as Salim Howard had an issue at the same time.
So that was Milwain going off course as he was trying to lap traffic. That's cost him valuable time. Considering how far ahead the leaders are, you need everything you can to have any hope of winning this race, and that certainly is not going to help him. This is lap traffic. This is not a pass 4 position, but this does not help Milwain.
I think he was being aggressive right there because he's been trying to catch Steven Vervaen, and you saw ultimately too aggressive into the brake zone, just kind of chokes him up, and now has to repass all those cars again.
Oof, and he's about 3.5 seconds behind Vervaen, he's probably most, I think, trying to battle here. Himself and Shelley are the two nearest rivals for him. So Ozzy's probably not thinking about a win, but you never know, since he is off strategy. At the very least, a podium probably on the cards, he hopes, and this time much more successful down through turn 9. I am seeing that it looks like he's back on his way, and let's see if he can make the laps up to catch up to those drivers ahead of him, or is he finally going to be pitting in soon? Not this lap, he carries on yet another.
And this shows about 4 laps past where he pitted previously. So I think that Ozzy was right. I'm happy he mentioned kind of the reverse strategy, if you will, because we've been talking about if you pit at lap 40, you pit at lap 40, whatever it is, you come out to have a 26 lap final stint. Well, you could simply do that short stint up front and then have those 40 lap stints to close out the race. So we'll just see if Ozzy Milwain is going to do that type of strategy, or if he is just throwing a bunch of curveballs out there. Joe, in baseball, pitchers have all sorts of different strategies on how to attack something. Who knows what Ozzy Milwain's doing?
Exactly. Sometimes you got to change it up, and it looks like changing up the order for 12th is Gary Thomas, who just overtook Lynn Kinchlow down into turn 6. Nice smooth move into there and didn't lose the car. Both of them, though, sporting quite a bit of damage on the right-hand sides of their machines.
In a replay of exactly how this pass went down here, you see Gary Thomas following Lynn Kinchlow down the back straightaway, just nice tucked up into the draft, moves out to the driver's right. We see a lot of these moves being made here, and actually really respectful racing from Lynn Kinchlow right there. Got on the brakes early, right back into the tire track, showed the nose, but knew that pass belonged to Gary Thomas.
So regarding that reverse strategy we've been talking about, I brought it up and you brought it up, you've been thinking about it, Joey, as well. We've been sort of spitballing, is Ozzy Milwain going for the reverse strat? Well, it is a valid strategy, but one thing that I would have thought he would have done in case he was planning that from the start is to either start with less fuel than the other drivers, or just somehow have a really blazing first stint, which he really didn't, to be honest. He was sort of around in and around in a good pace, top 10, top 5-ish, but wasn't really around the lead pack. Because why the proper short last stint strategy works out is that you also get the benefit of the short last stop. So your last stop is going to be around 30-ish seconds in terms of fuel. So you're going to be saving around 15 seconds of fueling time in that last stop. Now, if Ozzy decides to run a reverse strat, that's all fine, but he's not going to get the benefit of the shorter stop, which is around 10 to 15 seconds lost. So that's one thing to take into consideration here. However, it does give him great tactical flexibility, as we see David Baker and somebody else just jostling for position over those curbs.
Yeah, that's Cardamone that they had a nice little over-under battle, and it's not done yet. Coming down into turn 1, pretty heavy braking zone into here as they both go in deep. Cardamone looks like he is very, very deep and all the way to the outside of Baker, but cannot get the spot back yet. He's going to give it another go into turn 2, and he's going to get into the side of him. Both of them almost go off track. Baker holds on to it. Elder says, thank you very much. I'll take that spot off of Cardamone.
Yeah, and actually some pretty significant front left damage on this number 314, this black and orange car of Jeff Cardamone. We're going to get a GSRC replay here, and well, I thought that this was a pretty fair move from Cardamone. He just kind of got in a little bit too deep, got into the door, and ultimately it was the second piece of contact that sent himself into the tires.
Yeah, that one's a little hard to judge. Because I'm with you. It seems like he had the presentation. Yes, it was aggressive, but he certainly, telegraphed that it was going to happen. He had his nose down to that inside, and Baker said, "No, you don't," and eventually he ran away with it. So They do not have live stewards in this series, for those curious, so that any penalties that do happen are post-race as they are examined by the stewards. And yeah, just rocks up to the back of him and says, thanks for doing that for me.
Yeah, you know, and I think if I was going to play race control, I would probably toss that one out the window. It's a little bit like a self-serving penalty on Cardamone. And that's kind of how you have to view it, you know. Let them fight out there, and what happens, happens sometimes.
You stick your hand in the blender, you have to expect it to get chopped up. So that's it paid him back automatically as he was off at the side of the course, and he's still racing anyway, so he's back at it, and currently down in 22nd after Elder went by him. But now they're way up the road, so he's got to try and make that up by a significant margin at this stage. Other than that, interesting to note, and we haven't talked about these two in a while, Banfield and Pataska. Looking out the windshield, of course, we're not going to see a whole lot, but now from off the car on the TV cameras, where is Pataska? He's 4 seconds behind.
I've been noticing this. Unfortunately, when they got separated, Dallas Pataska just hasn't been able to close in that gap. And one of the reasons why it stretches out, when they run together, they hit the lap traffic together. When they run at different parts of the racetrack, well, guess what? The lap traffic can hold up the cars at different areas. All of a sudden, that gap widens.
Down the back stretch now, and 5 seconds apart between them, Dallas Pataska, with some work to do, no doubt. As we come around through under the Penrite Bridge once again, Banfield looks like he's got control, trying to add to his tally of wins, 4 to his name so far in his career, but none this season. Whoa, somebody in the background off course there. That was Jason Wallet.
Something to take a look at, and we started with 34 cars, Joe. I'm seeing 33 cars still out on the racetrack. I know that we're not even halfway through, but oh, there's another car with a little bit of an incident. But with how much contact we've seen, how much racing we've seen, and the nature of this racetrack, I'm really impressed to have 33 cars.
Absolutely. So Carl Burke, the only one out so far. And even Rob Courtney, who had to take some time for repairs, 13 laps down, still rolling. So, looks like with getting close to the halfway mark now, about 10 more laps, and we are just about there with a 3-stop strategy. It's not going to be quite broken up into that, but the drivers are going to be trying their best to... Well, excuse me, actually, it will be broken up at halfway. I guess I was thinking of the 45 at 90, but at 80, it would be the halfway mark for them. Again, don't ask me to do math on air. As we ride now on board with Oliver Wallen, and looks like he's got some friends in front of him.
Yeah, chasing down Kevin Hill, and oh, look at how tight it's getting through the section here. We were mentioning Kevin Hill had a really good stint there. Unfortunately, he's fallen back behind Edward Shelley as well as Ozzie Milwane. So now he's going to have to deal with Oliver Wallen in his mirror as well. Maybe picked up a little bit of damage or something out there, but not sure why Kevin Hill has fallen off the pace just a little.
Yeah, compared to how he looked at the start of this race, does look like he's struggling a little bit. Wonder if maybe there was an incident that we had missed, or maybe seen and forgot, that is causing him to have problems.
And I think there might have been a little bit of contact earlier on in the race that might have damaged his car just a little bit, might be suffering from the pace. But something that I'm keeping an eye on is that Ozzie Milwane car, because he's going to be running out of gas pretty soon. He's on lap number 41. We saw about 44 laps being able to be stretched out of these cars. That's only a few more.
So it does look like he's going for that reverse strategy, trying to take it long here on these stints. As we're on board with Howard now. Oh, look at the tires spin up coming off of turn 4. And that cost him valuable closeness to Travis Henderson, who's up ahead, battling with Jeff Schmeier for 14th right now.
Nice battle here for that 14th place position as they stream down, and oh, they're going to have to deal with some cars right in front of them. That's going to bunch them up. Let's see if Travis Henderson can take advantage here. Had a little bit of a lockup. Now they're going to get by that lapped car.
And that Wallen there actually, no, he had a slowdown penalty.
Was that Wallen?
Yeah, that was the 26. So that was not a lapped car. And he's fallen to 7th because of that move. That was, excuse me. So he was a lap ahead of them. So yeah, well, it wasn't a lapped car. It was.
Yeah, I just assumed with how slow he was going that it was a lapped car. But you're right. It looked like it was a slowdown penalty for the blue number 26 here. That's why he was so far off pace.
Same effect as the blue flags, just wrong order. Yeah, I was just as confused trying to figure out what was going on in that situation. Banfield now, look at him. He is on top of Howard, and Banfield's our leader, going to put a lap down now on yet another car. Only 6 left on the lead lap after Wallen had his cut course penalty and let the leader through.
I think the only big surprise there in all of this checkup is Dallas Pataska was able to take advantage. Remember, it was up over 4 seconds between himself and the leader, and now he's cut it back down to 2.5 as Ross continues to have to deal with some traffic. Now, Dallas is going to have to deal with it himself as well, but taking advantage at least as of right now.
Oh, Lynn Kinchlow is in. So he's taking his strategy. It looks like Rob Courtney also pitting now. And I see one more joining them, might go lightly. So starting to see a few drivers pull the trigger here on that second stop.
So that's for Lynn Kinchlow, that's a 36 lap stint, 42 for Golightly, Rob Courtney as well. Well, that's a short stint. Short stint for him, but he has significant damage on that car as well. So Kinchlow and especially Golightly are taking a little bit longer stints on their second one after that initial first short stint.
On board as we were riding, that was Daniel Howard, who went off course and kind of slammed into the Armco. I've such a strange track in terms of the boundaries here, Joey, because there's a few places where it almost kind of feels like a street circuit.
It's kind of how the Australians do their tracks, isn't it? They have these road courses that are incredibly fast, but yet they feel like street circuits at the same time with these tight little chicanes bouncing over curbs and really not a whole lot of visual reference to see around the corner. So yeah, Joe, I totally agree with you. I think a lot of the Australian circuits represent street circuits, even though they're a permanent road course.
One of our commentators way back in the day, Kevin Brown, used to describe the majority of Australian tracks is basically a goat path converted into a racetrack, which I think, yeah, is about how you describe most of them. They are usually very unique and narrow and difficult, but that's the way they seem to like them. Is it looks like Milwain has finally taken his second stop.
Well, and Ozzy, you can talk on that a little bit. So it looks like he did stretch it all the way to 44 laps.
Yeah, a 44 lap stint to pit in lap 74 for the second time. And in terms of where does that put him right now, if he puts another 44 lap in, that'll be... I may have overstretched myself in terms of mathematics there, which happens to the best of us. That's lap 118 for his presumably final stop, and we got a 161 lap race, so that's 43 laps for the final stint. He should be right in the window. That's a reverse strategy, essentially, a reverse three-stopper.
Yeah, so kind of pulled a blinder on us, thought maybe he was going to go for a 4 instead. It's just trying to switch things around. I guess it makes sense, Joey. You know, I've often heard if you do the same things as the cars that are beating you, well, then you're not going to beat them.
Yes, I think the old saying is if you keep following the leader, you're going to do exactly that. You have to do something different on the racetrack. And I think one of the benefits of going kind of that off strategy, not really off strategy, but maybe more off sequence, is it can put you out in a pack that you're not really familiar with racing in, or clean air in Ozzy Milwane's case. And if you have clean air versus racing, you get to really set your own pace, drive your car, manage your race yourself. So I just feel like it might not put you up front immediately, but it lets you be you as a racer and unfold your race.
Exactly. Putting it in your hands, and then you got to do with it what you will. As Ozzy Milwane running in 10th currently. For a brief while, we're looking at Ross Banfield once again. I have to say, I'm massively impressed by Ross's race, and just when I watch how he's handling the car, it looks very, very under control. Something about this either clicks with him, or he's been racing these cars before.
And he's patient. You know, you were having to deal with 33 cars on the racetrack, and you're going to have to deal with them. I mean, you're lapping all of them. You're going to have to deal with them multiple times. So there's no point in rubbing elbows, making enemies out there. The nicer you treat everybody as you come up on them, the nicer they're going to race you back.
He has been caught a little bit by Pataska. It's down to 3 seconds. Remember, it was as close to 5 before. So it looks like maybe Dallas is closing in. Could be some of that traffic. Maybe he's having to get aggressive to try and cut that back down. But he can at least see him a little bit up the road, although it's far, far ahead as we, yeah, there you see that little speck. That is your leader.
Well, and if you're searching for something else, Ross Banfield is coming up on Kevin Hill. Now, Kevin Hill is running in the 5th place position, so that means our leader, Ross Banfield, will be lapping into the top 5 here just before halfway, or right at halfway.
Just impressive stuff. Basically, almost about a second a lap faster on average than that car. Just a little bit less than that he's been averaging this entire race. And that's 5th place, so just stunning pace out of that 777 machine. As we look off the back of Kevin Hill, he's also, this is what I was talking about earlier. He's trying to lap Gerard Gilbert while also having to be lapped by Banfield.
Looks like Gilbert is going to get out of the way very nicely, was aware of what was coming up in the mirrors. And I don't think that Kevin Hill is just going to pull over and let Ross Banfield by. I don't think he's going to make it difficult. You see Ross showing the nose here, but got to remember, Kevin is on the lead lap as they deal with another car that was spun off the racetrack right there.
Yeah, and that's been kind of a story of the day. There's been a lot of cars that are off track that we've seen, but kept going, thankfully. So everybody's just going to have to mind their P's and Q's. If they get a yellow flag in front of them, the sim does it automatically if there's a car that's stopped or out of position. So you'll be warned, but you obviously don't have to slow down like you would in real life. You just... it's basically informational that be careful. There's a car that's not where it's supposed to be, and that's up to you to interpret that and try to manage your own race.
Joe, I'm going to get a little nerdy over here. You know, for people that might not be into Sims or other video games, maybe, you know, if you're Ross Banfield, I'm seeing he's got about a 50-second gap, almost a minute gap to Steven Vervayan in 3rd place. What's that extra challenge, that side quest, if he laps all the way up to the podium? That's what I'm going to put the challenge on Ross Banfield. Can he lap all the way up to the podium?
See, I feel like because Pataska's remained a real threat, I don't think he's thinking about that. I'm pretty certain that that he's more worried about holding on to this win, making sure that he doesn't overextend himself and give Pataska an in here. So right now, I'm sure he'd love to, and I'm sure he feels really chuffed that he's been able to lap as many cars as he's had. But if he's running this smart, I would think that he's trying to keep his eyes on the prize.
I totally agree with you. You're 100% right. I just love to interject some humor in here. And, you know, when you are Ross Banfield, what keeps you driving out there at this pace? Is it just the pride to be able to click off these laps and be so dominant out there? Or do you need a carrot to chase to go have fun?
I think he just needs Dallas Pataska close enough in the mirrors as he is, and that's a motivation right there. If he was far enough ahead, then possibly. I'm sure he'd given himself some sort of goal to match, whether that be pace-based or catching certain lapped cars. But yeah, I think right now he's got enough to worry about. While they are way ahead of everybody else, it's continued to chop down. In fact, you can see there Pataski coming out of turn 4 has it down to less than 3 seconds. He has been quicker than Banfield on average.
And now he's got to deal with that same car. I believe that's Kevin Hill right in front of Dallas Pataska, so he's going to have to dispose of this black and green car. Gets checked up a little bit, so this will cost him a little bit of time on that road to the leader.
By the way, we've hit the halfway mark at exactly halfway through this lap. So we're partway through. We're 250 kilometers into this event, and we still aren't totally sure who's going to win this thing, although it is right now pretty firmly in the hands of Ross Banfield. He just cannot lose grip on that ball at this stage and fumble as we wait for the rest of the drivers to pit in. And speak of the devil, Oliver Wallen has now pitted.
So just gonna interject with something briefly. Every time you guys, because I'm the only non-American here, I must remind our viewers. So every time you guys talk about the 500-kilometer race, I can just see the look in your eyes and the brain going, what the is a kilometer?
I ran cross country in high school, so we ran 5Ks. I became familiar with kilometers.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
3.2 miles. That was always the easy conversion in my head.
Yeah. How much is 1 mile in kilometers exactly? Do you remember?
That I do not know. I know the reverse.
So it's 1.609, I think.
Aha.
But yeah, it's around 1.6.
The educational nature of the Global Sim Racing channel, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Tom Guest here is in pit lane in the meantime, sharing a pit lane with another driver. That's why it looks a little bit weird there. Again, for those that aren't familiar with sim racing, that is normal. They share the pit lanes so that we can have more than the regularly allotted pit stalls, and the more the merrier, especially in this series, which usually has pretty big fields. But that's why those two were kind of ghosted into one another as we watch this run up to turn 6 between Shelley, Thomas, and Banfield. So Banfield now getting ready to lap 4th place.
And he's running into a lot of traffic here, and the further he goes up to Edward, Shelley, and these other cars, you know, just the faster on pace they really are. And if you guys keep talking math over here, Joe, I've got my mouth shut because my mom, she's a teacher, primarily a math teacher. So if we need to talk numbers one day, maybe I'll bring Mama Atterbury on the broadcast. She can help out.
That.
Please do, please do.
Yes, we need that as a guest spot one of these days. Edward Shelley is now in. So while Edward was close to being lapped, he's going to, I guess, make this easier for the leaders and for himself, possibly, by coming in and taking his service now. 39 laps into his stint. So yeah, that's pretty close to the marker.
Yeah, I'm seeing the other cars that are up there. Kevin Hill in that 4th place position that was just behind Edward Shelley. He's got 41 laps on his current stint, while our leaders, Ross Banfield, Dallas Pataska, they're still on lap 39. Down here in 11th, this is Travis Henderson. He's only got 36 laps on his current stint.
On board with Schmeier, looking forward on Travis Henderson. Travis, another one of those that is, I was thinking of Trevor Vovrosky. I'm sorry, I get those two mixed up sometimes. Vovrosky is 5th in the championship. Travis is actually 11th, so he is still up there, but just outside of our points sheet that we showed earlier on. Oh, and speaking of which, that's Travis off course right now in the final chicane. How did he get there?
We've seen a lot of rear lockup going into that final chicane. It's also a little tedious with how slow it is if you bounce over the curbs. And Joe, I know there was a lot of V's and R's going into both of those names, so I can see how you got confused. But there it was. It was that first curb got up on it with a little bit of yaw angle in it, and just unfortunately around it went.
Yeah, that handed over not only the spot to Schmeier, but Howard and Mueller managed to get through. Oh, Kevin Hill is in. There we go. More of them starting to topple over and take their strategy call here. Again, the farthest they can go is going to be 90 laps based on what we saw in the first stint. Nobody was able to go farther than 45.
And I'm seeing as these cars are exiting pit lane, looks like he will get off of the pit lane limiter. I was noticing our leader is coming down the front straightaway himself. So it's like Ozzy was mentioning, it's right about a 1 minute delta in terms of that lap time. But something to keep an eye on. Dallas Pataska starting to close it back in. 2.2 seconds the gap now.
Interesting stuff. And us talking about whether or not we'll have more than 2 cars left on the lead lap. Well, Vervaen is already close to being lapped. He's about 55 seconds behind the lead currently. And they've been running 108s and 109s out here. So it's perhaps another 15, 16 laps before we'll see him caught. And there you can see drivers kind of trying to politely stay out of the way, but that's how quick it all happens when you're trying to go by cars that are not on the same lap as you as Banfield approaches Hill and Preston.
Yeah, 2 cars just pretty much nose to tail that you're going to have to navigate around. Thankfully, he's coming out of the final chicane. Hopefully these cars see the leader right behind, at least give way a little bit. Oh, a little bit of a stack up, and there goes through the middle our leader, Ross Banfield, always on the toes.
Yeah, didn't think Kevin Hill expected that car to check up as much as he did, but thankfully both he and Ross were able to avoid any sort of crazy accident, especially on the main straight where they're going pretty fast down there, and it's narrow with walls on either side, so there's no place to escape. If we have an accident there, it could easily become a track blockage.
Yeah, and thankfully the cars are a little bit more spread out. We do still have the conveyor belt of groups of cars running together, but you're right, there isn't a whole lot of places to go around, and as you get the shot going down the front straightaway, look, you got guardrails on both sides even here.
Exactly. So looks like Howard now pits, so more drivers in and out. Another interesting thing about this race is that it is a solo driver event and not a team event, despite the length. Now 3 and some hours is not super long, but still, they're going to be exhausted, especially mentally, I would think, Joey, because the focus these cars take.
And remember, these cars, even though they do have the 6-speed sequential, most of the time you're having to use the clutch, at least on the downshifts, to make sure everything is smooth in these cars. So there's a lot going on, definitely, for sure.
Down into turn 9, and the Evolve Sim Sport cars going to be able to overtake as Gugaro Jr. puts another lap on go lightly. And we should be getting close to those leaders now pitting in, because I'm seeing lap 43 for Banfield and Pataska.
You're right up along that number of the fuel window. I don't think that they can stretch it to 45, although we did see a couple cars stretch it all the way to that 45 lap. I think in terms of the leaders, though, they've got a pretty solid fuel number.
Absolutely, yeah. The few that went to 45 went right down to the end and then had to pit in. Dennis Cole was one of those, and he's on lap 41 of his stint. He's actually moved up to 4th because of everybody who's pitted, and our leader is in along with Pataska. There you go, end of lap 43 of this stint for them.
Interesting to see 1 lap shorter than what we saw. I was expecting him to stretch it at least 1 lap further, but let's see if Dallas can close it in at all on this pit stop. It's been about a 40 to a 45 second time in the box.
Up onto the jacks, and this time, because of the distance they put on Vervaen, I'm pretty sure they're already going to be out of the pits by the time we see the 8 reach pit lane, if he pits on this lap. If not, then he's going to realize he actually is a pit stop behind them as they start to emerge with him zipping by. These two waiting patiently, usually seeing the 40 to 35 second pit stops for most cars, so they got a little bit of time to go. Banfield almost there. and he should be off the jacks here pretty shortly. 44 seconds, a little bit longer, and Pataska also 44. Yeah, 2/10 apart from each other. They are mirroring each other almost exactly.
And you were right, Vervayan did come into pit lane himself, so he is now taking those tires as well as the fuel. Ross Banfield, Dallas Pataska feed themselves back out onto the racetrack. But you were mentioning those pit stop times near identical. However, the in and out from Dallas Pataska, he has gained time. Look at how much he has closed it in on Ross Banfield.
You're right, 1.4 now, so he must have really attacked the cones on his way in, or at least stopped in his pit stall with a much better accuracy, as Dennis Cole is going to be emerging. So he has pitted a lot earlier than what he did on his first stint, switching it up a little bit. Vervayan is just now emerging as well. That leaves us only with Schmeier and Henderson of the front runners that still need a stop.
He who's the first to kind of blink and come down, take that fuel, as the front straightaway continues to be a very, very busy place. This is the battle for 13th as we got more cars coming back out onto the racetrack here in turn number 1. And more lockup as Tom Guest is having to deal with all sorts of issues out there. And I believe that was actually Tom Guest coming back out on the racetrack.
And that was Vervayan that was having to sneak by, trying not to get tipped around by Guest, because yes, he was battling for position with Thor, who spun up his tires off of turn 4, so he's unfortunately not going to be close enough now, but was doing his best to try and threaten the 058 as he was being lapped. Baker, who we're on board with, breaking down into turn 9, also getting an opportunity, another little spin of the tires from Thor.
Oh, and yeah, David Baker just kind of waiting for the opportunity to try to get up alongside this other white and red car as they stream out of the final chicane. Jeff Schmeier on pit road, and now David Baker hits pit road himself.
Yeah, just as Thor had another huge wiggle. Somebody needs to tell him that Thor should not put the hammer down so hard, as the 659 has been burning up the rear tires. Sorry, couldn't resist. And we check in once again with Ozzie Milwain as it cycles back through. Now 16 older or 15 lap older tires than those around him in terms of position, but he is back and forth.
Having to deal with a little bit of traffic, as well as Edward Shelley hunting him down in that mirror. And this is kind of an interesting place to be in if you're Ozzie Milwain. You're settled into your next fuel stint. However, Edward Shelley is on half his new tires behind you, so you got to be careful just about the grip from this number 34.
And this is where it makes this whole strategy interesting in comparison to those around him. Can he keep the pace up? There is Thor once again getting out of the way and steps aside. Shelley right on top of him. If he can get a good exit out of the final turn here, he's got a good chance to try and attack down into 1.
Wide out of that corner and right in the slipstream is Edward Shelley. Now he's getting the advantage, pulls out driver's left. How deep on the brakes can he go? Ozzie Milwain on the outside, hanging tough.
But not tough enough. He has to give it up, and Shelley is through into P4. So on they carry, and we should be getting to the end of the pit stops here pretty soon, because I see Travis Henderson. Oh, well, Travis Henderson is off track, but he's on lap 44 of his stint. So he's going to have to work his way back to pit lane here. Looks like he didn't hit the wall, but he's shaking all the gravel off of him.
Down into that same problem area we've seen all day long, Joe. Just taking it too hot, bouncing over the curbs, and doesn't make it all the way out into the wall, but just over-rotates the car, loses all of your momentum.
And he did pit in this lap. That seems like a good call at this point. And that is the last of them on the cycle, which means we're going to take a short break here, and we'll be back with more racing here, the second half of the majors. Sandown 500. Ross Banfield is your leader.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Somebody, anybody, really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome back to Sandown International Motor Raceway, and we are now on lap 98, actually, close to the 100-lap mark here for the Sandown 500. Ross Banfield continues to lead over Dallas Pataska. It cut down to 1.4 seconds or so, but the traffic once again has not been kind to the 23, as Ross is somehow able to navigate it just that little bit better, and that's put him at arm's length once again. We saw a little, well, we didn't quite see it on the screen, but we could out through a virtual window a little bit of a problem. But this tells you, oh, no, actually, this is Ozzie Milwayne. Whoa! And did that car avoid him?
I'm not. Yeah, I don't know, Joe.
If they did, that is eyes in the back of your head type stuff.
Look, and just
he did get him.
Tiny bit of contact, but that could have been so much worse. That looked like a plane accident going in.
Yeah, up and over the curb. Not good at a very high-speed braking zone. I was about to say Banfield's only mistake about that we've seen so far is he put two wheels into the dirt coming out of the final chicane recently. So he is not impervious, but it does look like he's managing things still pretty well at this stage. We check in with the battle down in 13th. And just to tell you how torrid the pace has been from Ross Banfield, this is the battle for 13th, and it's 2 laps down.
He's lapped all the way up to 10th place when I'm talking about 2 laps down. So, yeah, just incredible pace. But this is Vravoski, Mueller, and Schmeier all locked into that battle for the 13th place position. And oh no, looks a little bit wide from Vravoski. That's going to open the door now. That's going to be Schmeier trying to take advantage.
I think that's Mueller, yep, in the 47, who gets through. And Schmeier is not able to sneak by, unfortunately, but Dick has gotten up into 13th, so that was for position. Trevor now falls down and is still under threat because Schmeier could try and make a wild dive down into turn 1 if he wants, and it looks like no, he's going to be too far away.
And talking about that number 47, that blue and white car of Dick Mueller that just went by, having a fantastic race so far. I know they're down 2 laps, but up 21 positions from where he qualified.
Yeah, he's one of our biggest movers, and Ozzie Milwayne is, with less of a surprise with him being off strategy. He's up 16 spots from where he started. The only 2 drivers that have gained double digits in this 34-car race. We've lost a few more since we last spoke. Rob Courtney is out, and Jeff Cardamone. Now, I thought we had lost Patrick Kopp, but he is actually back in the car. He must have just hopped out of it and waited for the repairs to finish, and now he's back on track.
Well, Joe, looking at the virtual time, it just clicked over to 1 o'clock, so that Snack Shack is putting out some prime sense right now. If you're coming in for a pit stop, you might as well grab a sandwich.
Yeah, that is, I think, a good excuse to me, honestly. Look at the temperature, though. Remember, wasn't it about 82 degrees Fahrenheit when we started? It's continued to climb and get hotter and hotter out here.
Yeah, and the wind has continued to stay up there, but I think it's pretty typical what we see out of these supercars race. You're going to have to battle the track, you're going to have to battle the heat, and ultimately going to have to battle how much you abuse these tires.
Yeah, still a long ways yet to go. We're only just past halfway in this race. And as we get to the end, there's going to be drivers that are weary, maybe not focusing as well. So you have to keep your wits about you, no doubt. Checking in with Jason Wallet, one of our drivers that has been having a bit of a tough time out here today. We've seen him go off a couple times. He's getting ready to fight with Joseph Homan for this 23rd spot.
Yeah, and both cars painted the same color. This is always a difficult thing to do out there, battling your teammate. You want to stay clean. Either that or they are enjoying running the race together at this point.
Got two of our UDOX cars out there racing for position. Fortunately, probably not as many points as they would be want to be racing for as they exit out of turn 4, but they are doing their best and keeping away at it. Like I said, they've kind of had a few problems, both of them have, over the course of this race, but they're still out there. They're 4 laps down, and they're going to try and bring home what they can. Because let's remember, part of the other reason that we do still have as many cars as we have out here is there is a spare car waiting for them in pit lane. So if you get damaged, you can get in there and try and take that and then get back out. As there is a car off course next to them. That was Tom Dreiling. That was not for position, though, I think.
Oh, that car was suspiciously painted, very similar to Vrosky. I got a little bit worried out there as we continue to watch that battle between Wallet and Homan on the racetrack. And you mentioned it is a little bit further down, but, you know, points are always available. You got to keep on chugging out there. You never know what can happen in the final 60 laps.
I think that's a good point. You got to stick with it as long as you can, especially in the majors with some of these longer races. They can sometimes really reward you if you just keep at it, just keep swimming. But for now, we've got 31 cars that are still swimming out around this horse racing track, and we're going to check in with our old favorite, Ozzie Milwayne, as he's catching up to Kevin Hill for position. This is for 6th.
Yeah, nice battle here, and I was actually going to bring in our Ozzie Puaka because it's getting to be to that point that we've talked about strategy. We know the fuel numbers. Have you seen anything out on the racetrack that maybe somebody might take advantage of or go off sequence here in the last 50 laps?
No, I shut off my windows 10 laps ago. It's too sunny. No, but it's nothing really that would ring my bells, to be honest. What I am thinking about actually bringing this back to a conversation we had on the break, because we do work even when we're not working, supposedly. Conversation on the break, and I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna put it out there, not as something we discussed as a committee, but as my tip for Dallas Pataska. I think he should undercut Ross Banfield.
Well, and that's exactly what I was getting to. It looks like, Joe, this is a replay of Dick Mueller here.
Yep, racing with Thomas. You see he's got a nice big run. Gonna look around the outside of turn 6, which is still tricky to try and make this pass stick, but watch this. Woohoo! Brings it back, has to cut the course a little bit, and then eventually give up some time for the cut course, but at least he's still racing, because my goodness.
Very reminiscent of the victory laps from Shane Van Gisbergen, if you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, a heck of a save there from Dick Mueller to keep it on the racetrack. And I mentioned how much of a hard charger Dick has been out there, and he is continuing to battle adversity, keep it on the racetrack, keep moving it forward.
Wonderful job there from Dick Mueller, and actually, it looks like Thomas is behind him once again, so excuse me. So he did manage to stay ahead of him in the end. But look at this, Trevor Vrosky. Oh, and getting up into the side of him, sends him spinning off the course. He returns back on, and he only loses 2 positions in that. Great recovery there from Thomas. He's going to have to fight Schmeier for it.
You know, the Australians, they love hooning, you know, I think is what they call it. And anything that has to do with tire smoke, 360s, they are all for it. And I love this racing.
Yeah, I mean, things have suddenly changed out here. It was somewhat calm for a while, and now it's suddenly exploding once again on board with Howard, who's also been brought into the fray thanks to this battling. This is all for position, except for Tom Dreiling a little bit farther up the road, but otherwise 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th.
Fantastic. Even on lap 106 here, streaming out onto the front straightaway. See if anybody can put the power down, get that run out. It still looks like Schmeier chasing Gary Thomas is going to be the closest one of the bunch.
And Howard's had some connection issues. He's disappeared. We'll see if he reappears here soon. So it's gone from 4 to 3 in a very, very unusual way here. So we hop on board with Ross Banfield. Now who is he lapping? That's Adam Preston in the 926, it looks like.
And he's been able to get through this traffic quite nicely. You look in his rear view mirror to Dallas Pataska. Look at how many cars are lined up between himself and second place. I think Ross was able to clear him at the right time.
Yeah, definitely. And that, I mean, you've been talking about it, that's been one of his strategies, honestly, or one of his strengths, I should say, in this race. There's Vervayan currently in third, a lap down now. But Joey, you keep talking to us about how Ross seems a lot more, I guess, composed in traffic.
And that's a great way to put it. I think composed is a great word. I don't want to say that Dallas is being aggressive in traffic because he has kept it very clean. I think the word that I used earlier is maybe a little bit more energetic to try to get by some of the cars, while Ross is just kind of letting the passes develop, letting his pace come to him. So I have a feeling that if Dallas Pataska is running with our leader, he's got a chance at the win. However, if it stays kind of this seesaw accordion on the gap, it's going to be tough for Pataska to go up there and catch him.
Yeah, we are down to just these two cars on the lead lap now that Vervayan has been lapped. So only Ross Banfield and Dallas Pataska are pretty much the main ones that we expect to win this race. Now, both could still wreck out. Obviously, it would take some crazy circumstances. But as we've seen with Australian supercars, crazy circumstances aren't always that crazy.
These cars are big. 3,000 pounds, nearly 700 horsepower. So if you are not paying attention at every single corner, yeah, Joe, the accidents can be big. The speeds that they carry are massive. And when you have an off-track incident, it's usually not small.
Oh, and it looks like, remember, I mentioned Howard having some issues with his connection. Well, he has disconnected and had to rejoin in a little bit. I guess he went over and kicked his router and is now trying to get back in and see if he can do what he can, which is a real shame because I believe he was top 15 or somewhere around there. But Dick Mueller's been giving us a lot of fun. This time, instead of fighting with others, it looks like it's with Lynn Kinchlow looking down the inside. And Kinchlow says no and shuts the door.
See how they navigate through here. Both pretty clean, putting the power down. Dick Mueller's continuing his charge up 22 positions. I have a feeling if he gets by Lynn Kinchlow here with the amount of time remaining, there's a big gap between them and the next car, which is Tom Guest. But I think given the pace, it'll be interesting to see if Dick Mueller can grab a top 10 at the end of this.
Staying out of the way, Holman pulls off to the side as Mueller tries to see if he can just get to the apex first. No, he's going to lock the brakes up and send it a bit too deep. Here comes Kinchlow to shut the door. No, he's going to be able to manage it. No, he's going to get tipped to the side. Has to catch the car multiple times. Mueller is still running, but he is in 12th and not 11th, and Lynn Kinchlow scampers away.
You know, I think that Kinchlow is actually prepared to let Mueller have that position, but I think just Dick mismanaged the gap a little bit, trying to slide right there, and a little bit of contact turned into multiple pieces of contact through the couple of corners.
Great job by Mueller to keep the car from turning completely around. Was sawing at the wheel for sure there. So we take a look at Pataska now. 2.5 seconds. How things have changed. It was looking like it was edging ever closer for a while, Ozzy, and it's looking less and less like Dallas has something for Ross unless he's really holding his cards close to his chest.
Yeah, so they got that one more pit stop to go. And if they are running at the strategy we are expecting, as you see the lap time comparison between those drivers, and it's not much. Just look at it, it's not much between the drivers, but it's like Dallas is not gaining anything on Ross Banfield, and he's gonna have to hope for a mistake. And he's in a very difficult position in a sense that 2.5 seconds is something you can lose with effectively one off-track excursion, one unlucky timing with a lapped car, a misjudgment, anything. So on one hand, Dallas doesn't want to risk anything. On the other hand, he's got nothing to lose. In terms of trying an alternative strategy, because he's not gonna lose enough time to let Vervaen past him. He's got a lap on the car behind. So if he is gonna come to the pit lane, it's gonna have to happen at around 33, 34 laps to go. So in around 15 laps time. Alternatively, we're gonna see them come to the pit lane next time with around 26, 27 laps to go.
Ooh, I think Kinchlow may have gotten some damage from that contact because he was in pit lane just now, and it was 36 seconds. So I wonder if he took his spare car, and that may have given him a meatball back. Let me check here. No, he did not take his spare car, so it wasn't a meatball flag that he had to serve. But for some reason, he's gone way off strategy because he cannot make it to the end from here.
I was questioning that myself, and he pitted with about 35 laps on his stint of tires, so he should have had enough fuel to at least make it another handful of laps. But you're right, pitting with what was 51 laps to go, there's no way that he can make it to the end from here.
He's splitting it. He's just splitting the last stint. Exactly what I was thinking Dallas Pataspa should do. So 25 and 26, thereabouts. Just gonna run shorter last stints, try to gamble on pace.
A little bit off course there for Thor. Yeah, I guess it was the best option that maybe Lynn had in that situation, just had to deal with it. Whatever the case, he's down in 18th now, and will have an extra pit stop compared to a lot of others. Ross Banfield, though, has been playing it pretty cool and is still at about 2.5 seconds ahead of Dallas Pataska with 49 laps to go. Those that want to make it a long final stint are getting very close to being able to pit in.
That window will open with what is about 44 laps to go. So I'm curious if we are going to get any of those drivers do the shortened third stint, which they're currently on, and basically as soon as that window opens, come in, fill up the car, and get back out on the racetrack, or if we'll see them do what we've been talking about and run those 40 lap, 45 lap stints all the way through and then make that final stint that short one.
Well, sorry,
yeah, go on.
Sad news about Matt Gelder. If you're a fan of his, he has accrued too many incidents. He's our latest DNF and is now out of this race. So the 69 car is retired and only 30 are left.
Guess he wasn't nice enough after all,
Nope.
despite the number. And yeah, I was about to say regarding the strategy, that's a good point you make, Joey, because now you reap the benefits also of a shorter third stint effectively. So if you shorten the third stint, you're also able to take a shorter last stop, even though you're filling the car up to the brim, to enable it to go 44, 45 laps. Because the car still has some fuel left, it's still going to be a shorter stop. Whereas Ozzy Milwain, as we established earlier, he had that long pit stop because he was going from an empty car to a full car. Starting with a full car, then essentially just going to the pit lane earlier and running a full stint.
And I think Mueller had more contact once again. He was lapping Gary Thomas, and it was again in turn 6. Thankfully, everybody was able to carry on, but that's not been a happy corner for Mueller in this stage of the race for sure. The 47 still running 11th, but it's been a race full of excitement for him, that's for sure.
Yeah, it has been up to 11th, like you were mentioning. of 23 positions. Got a little bit of a ways to go up the road now to catch up to Tom Guest. But that would be the carrot to chase to try to get the top 10 finish at the end of this next 47 laps. And something that I was noticing up front here, Joe, Ross Banfield and Dallas Pataska, this is the first time that they've had clean air. Now I'm putting clean air in quotation marks over here, air quotes. But we're going to see what kind of the pace is kind of halfway through their fuel stint just running by themselves.
So as we watch them now work their way through the last chicane, Trevor Vovrosky versus Jeff Schmeier battling for 12th. That's Trevor in the red and white, Schmeier in the teal and gray. Just behind him, Jeff did not get a good run down the front stretch, and he's not going to be close enough to challenge him down into turn one this time. Still haven't quite reached that pit window. Everybody's having to still sit and wait if they want to pit early. The other thing I'm noticing, Joey, is I'm seeing a ton of marbles off the racing line lately.
I'm happy you saw it as well. I was noticing it on the curbs earlier, specifically those exit curbs. The further you get off track, the more you're going to drive into those marbles. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're having to save the car and you're way off the racing line, that is just less grip out there. Most likely, you'll slide even further.
So we head down into that second to last little braking zone under the Penrite Bridge. Once again, you can see how tough it is to try and manage these cars into these corners. But I have to say, an admirable job, because we haven't mentioned it a while, and just a reminder for the audience, these drivers do not regularly drive these cars. The major series is all about mimicking as many real-world major events as they can. And so you're hopping from discipline to discipline, car to car, track to track. And you have to be incredibly adaptable. In fact, the trophy is named, the Drivers Championship trophy is named the Mario Andretti Cup.
Got to be good in everything. And I even saw Ryan Bauer behind the scenes saying, remember, just a short while ago, we were in off-road trucks over at Crandon covering some of these drivers or covering this pack. So what a huge change of difference between those types of racing and this.
A monstrous difference. I mean, it's not even the same surface that they're racing on, let alone the type of car. But Banfields and the UDOX Oliver, number 777, currently approaching the back of Howard and go lightly in front of him. Howard's going to jump out of the way. They are battling for position, so that was very polite from Daniel, because he's going to give up some valuable time here to Mike.
And crucially, I mentioned, we're going to see the outright pace, and I think Dallas Pataska was able to put together a couple good laps there. He's closed the gap now down to 1.7 seconds to our leader. As we're catching more traffic, I do feel like Ross Banfield has been a little bit better able to work his way around the traffic more efficiently, but the gap is as close as it's been in a while.
Oof, he's got to be careful, though. We keep talking about this being a potential snag for his hopes at a win, as he got close to the back of Go Lightly, and any sort of spin or problem for a car in front of him could collect him in an incident that is not his fault. And he still has Pataska only 1.2 seconds behind. Dallas is caught up due to some of this traffic, I would assume, since we last saw them. But now Dallas is going to be held up as they break down into turn 9.
Yeah, that's Daniel Salim Howard back out on the racetrack. Let's buy Dallas Pataska, but now Dallas is going to have to deal with Mike Golightly, just like how Ross did on the other side of the racetrack. See the 777 trying to escape while he can. Pataska should get around this white car on the front straightaway.
Yeah, that was a costly series of corners. It went from 1.2 to 1.9 now, and Dallas needs everything he can get, because as we've said, it doesn't look like when they're just in clear air that he's got enough to try and run him down. He needs the help, as this battle behind him between Go Lightly and Howard is starting to pick up now that the car has left the street and they can return to the makeshift hockey court.
Well, and the other thing I'm seeing is Golightly, like you said, has his mirrors full back there. Is The couple cars that Ross is passing right now, they are teammates. How much is that going to come into play with Pataska now running up on him?
The two O-names are in. Oliver and Ozzy have both pitted this lap, I believe, with exactly how much they need to go on just about a full stint. So there you can see them taking tires, getting ready to emerge, and now we'll have a very clear picture of where everybody is going to wind up once everybody else takes their stops. Oh, and I think Go Lightly's going to lose a spot to Howard. They were still in a very hot fight. No, excuse me. Go Lightly wanted to pit in, and that's what caused a little bit of miscommunication back there as we're watching on board with Pataska. Still a little bit too far behind Banfield as he's trying to catch up some time, but he's also got a bunch of UDOX cars in front of him.
Joseph Homan is the first one. That's the car that we are looking at, and Dallas Pataska gets a nice run. Homan's going to pull off to the side, let that second place car by. Nice and clean, not holding up the battle for the lead, although, like you mentioned, it was about 1.1 seconds. Now it's stretched back out to over 2.
Yep, I don't think they made life intentionally easy for Dallas in those overtakes. They were trying to help out their teammate there, who, did Ross just have a slip up? I think Ross went deep into turn 9 just now.
That's not the first time we've seen it. We've got another car stopped on track. I believe that was Lynn Kinchlow with problems right in front of our leaders. You see him trying to limp the car back to pit road right now.
Vervayan going to follow through. And Vervayan is definitely in no man's land here. He's a lap behind the car ahead and 13 seconds ahead of there. Lynn Kinchlow in his battle finds himself off course. Great recovery, though. Just caught it. Oh, well, never mind. It was a great recovery.
And, you know, I think that there might be something wrong with Lynn's car, because remember, he had that earlier pit stop that we were kind of questioning, and here he's getting going. He grabs a gear, has some wheel spin, and just can't quite seem to save the car. I wouldn't doubt if he was also dealing with some steering or suspension problems.
Well, he went back into pit lane, and now he actually has taken his spare car. So it was good for him that he did not take it before, or else he'd really be sitting in there just kind of twiddling his thumbs at this stage and not able to do much. But back to the battle. In fact, one of our closest battles on track, honestly. Everybody's separated so far in this 500-kilometer race that now 1.5 seconds was pretty tight in comparison between Ross and Dallas.
It's closed it in, and Ozzy, I want to bring you in one more time here, because these drivers, our top two, they're only about 3/4 of the way through their fuel stint, but the fuel window is open to make it to the end. Do you see a benefit from maybe Dallas Pataska doing that undercut?
Yes, I do. Because you get on, okay, you don't get the benefit of a shorter stop. You're carrying some extra fuel right now if you want to make it happen. At the same time, what you're doing is a twofold benefit. You get on the fresher tire sooner, which is going to give you a momentary lap time advantage. And secondly, you're going to take that information away from Ross Banfield. Then Ross Banfield doesn't know where you are. Ross Banfield can't check his mirrors, see how close you are. And also, you don't necessarily have to pass Ross Banfield on track. You can do it during the pit stop cycle. Ross comes out of that shorter stop thinking he's in the lead, and oops, that's Dallas Pataska 5 seconds ahead. So it depends. Right now it looks like Dallas is able to catch a little bit up to Banfield, is able to get a second win sort of in this race, so it's all up in the air. But if he is going to indeed undercut him, then he's going to have to do it with around 35 laps to go, at latest 30 to go, because 26 to go is when we're anticipating them to the pit lane for the final time. Or 28 to 29 to go, thereabouts.
Just looking, and I apologize if we've already talked about this. Did we mention that Oliver Wallen is ahead of Ozzy Milwane, and by a pretty big margin, and they've both taken their final stops. Oliver Wallen is the highest car to have taken 3 stops now.
Yeah, he, just quick mention, Oliver Wallen's last stint was 36 laps, so he actually undercut him.
Interesting.
That's the power of the undercut, Joe, that I was just talking to Ozzy about, because if you come in now, sure, your fuel, you're going to take a little bit longer on the fuel, but it puts you back out onto the racetrack. And if you're in the mirror of somebody, it's a giant question mark to them at that point.
Well, I do have a question mark because I'm looking at the times. Wallen was in for 42.9, but Milwain was 44.6. So he only was 2 seconds faster, and they're apart by 14, 15 seconds right now. So it wasn't just the pit stop. Something must have happened.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. There must have been an issue either on an in lap or an out lap. I believe this is actually Dennis Cole, as well as this is another battle on the racetrack here. Dick Mueller, I believe.
Yes. So, and I mean, he has been Mr. Excitement this race, that is for sure. That's a car going backwards at the side of the track. That's David Baker, who eventually gets turned around and is missing some parts, unfortunately. So he must have had a major incident. And let's see if he still has his spare car. No, he does not. David Baker may be parked for the day.
Check out this GSRC replay coming through. The final chicane coming out onto the front straightaway here. Oh, just squeezed that throttle a little bit too much, got into the wall.
Burnt the toast, unfortunately. So Baker is now in pit lane and waiting to see how long those repairs will take before he is allowed back out. Oh, and it looks like he is out, so it wasn't too long. Thought he was going to be done, but it looks like they're happy with how the car looks, and they're going to wave him through as Pataska, for the first time since I want to say the opening stint here at the Sandown 500, is less than a second away.
Less than 3/4 of a second, and crucially, Ross Banfield's getting held up right here by another lapped car. Dallas Pataska draws it all the way in now to the back bumper. And if you're looking at the math, 37 laps to go, 36 laps on their fuel stint. If they want to split the last 2 stints evenly, they might dip to pit lane right here.
Let's see who does it. And neither of them do. They're both going to stay out. I agree with you guys before. If you're Pataska, you might as well try to undercut, do something different than Ross Banfield just to try and catch him out. Because yes, he's run him down, but right now he's also got to make the overtake.
I guess the only thing that could potentially be going through your head is if you're Dallas Pataska and you pit early, you do have to run those couple of laps with extra fuel. So he might be waiting maybe 2 or 3 more laps, 5 at the most, to do that undercut.
That's true. Well, let's see what he winds up doing in the end, because they're on lap 37 of the stint, so they can only go so much longer before they do have to pit in because the fuel is going to run out. Down into turn 9, still hounding him and riding in the tire tracks of that 777 machine, Dallas Pataska. I honestly didn't think he was going to make a race of this based on what we saw mid-race, but it's suddenly come alive.
I'm still a believer that if Pataska is within touch like he is right now, he's got a shot at this win. However, if it's that accordion gap with cars in between, it's just such a tough road to climb that hill back up to the leader. If he can stay within this rubber band distance and pass the lap cars at the same time as our leader, he's got a great shot.
By the way, highest driver to have taken their final stop right now, Edward Shelley, who has returned about a lap ago and is currently sitting in 5th position, but he's 2 laps down. So again, not a threat for the lead. Basically, it's going to be down to Banfield or Pataska. Those are the only 2 with a realistic shot at trying to win this race, and they both seem bound and determined to do so.
We got Wolf Dietrich-Otto as well as Tom Dreiling right in front of him. 2 cars, and actually Wolf is slow off the exit. Gonna check up Ross just a little bit, stays out of the battle for the most part, but Dallas Pataska is just saying thank you very much.
Either of them gonna pit in this time? Nope, they both carry on yet again. We also had a stop, I believe, from Kevin Hill. Yep, Hill is in pit lane. He pitted from 4th place. Provine still running in 3rd, has carried on, so he hasn't pitted quite yet. It's like a lot of cars going to try and run long on this final stint. just to try and give themselves some more space. Edward Shelley is now up to 4th as Hill is still taking service and finally emerging. So Edward Shelley just outside of the podium, but looks like it's going to be close between himself and Vervayan as they're about 1 minute and 5 seconds apart.
I know that Ozzy's got his tactician board over there, Joe, but we're still wondering on when these cars are going to kind of finally stop. I've got my Magic 8-Ball out over here, so maybe the Magic 8-Ball can help us with some strategy on if they're coming in and out of the pit lane soon.
I was going to say, is yours the little baby toy that you move the things along the wires? Is that like the baby abacus?
No, it's the one with all the blue dye inside. You shake it and it tells you your future.
Coming onto the main street. Go ahead.
Actually, I once tried that, I saw a man in all blue, and I was shaking him, and he told me my future is going to be in jail. It was a policeman.
Well, Pataska is partly in blue, and the teal and purple. Ross Banfield is trying to make sure and get that black and blue out of his mirrors as quickly as he can, but he's struggling to try and pull away from Ross Banfield, whereas before it looked like he could with ease. But Dallas, suddenly the car is looking hot right now as the temperatures have leveled out. It's at about 89 Fahrenheit on the track itself, but the wind stays the same, still blowing at a pretty stiff breeze over these heavy cars. We come down to 32 laps to go, this time at the line, and we're on lap 40 of the stint. Will they pit?
Magic 8-Ball, will Dallas Pataska pit this time? Better not tell you now. That doesn't help me at all. We're going to see if he comes in this time. No. So off to lap number 40 of this stint, clicking over to 41 now.
I think he is being caught out by the allure of the battle. So while we can speculate that it makes sense on paper to undercut him, at the same time you see a driver in front of you, you want to catch up, you want to bring the battle to them. That's the sort of racing driver instinct, Joey, I think. What would you do if you were Dallas Pataska? Not your 8-ball, you.
I would try something different right now. They've been doing 43 laps, maybe 44 at most on fuel. They're at 41. If you want to undercut, technically you could do it with a 1-lap difference. I would probably prefer a 2-lap just to help me with some sticker tires and not have to worry about a car in the mirror. But if it's going to happen, it's either this lap or next or not at all.
Here's part of the problem, though. If he does try to undercut, Banfield does have the ability to respond within 1 lap. If he needs 2 laps, he can't really control that one as much.
Well, and here comes Banfield. Now he's going to take the opportunity. Yes. I like this move from our leader.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. I was going to bring it up, but then I thought, no, surely he won't do that. Like, what will Dallas Pataska do if Ross Banfield takes the initiative? Because we're at 31 to go, so there was definitely some fuel left in that tank. Dallas Pataska can go essentially 4 laps longer, maybe have a shorter pit stop. But will Dallas Pataska respond next time around? And I wonder if Ross saw, if we can get back to Dallas, how's the traffic looking out there on the track? Maybe Ross saw a lot of traffic in front of himself and maybe thought, you know what, no.
Yeah, he's in clear air. So Dallas is just trying to run through, although he's catching up to Tortola pretty quickly. But Ross is out and rolling now, just as our new leader is approaching the final chicane. Here we are on board with him. Dallas Pataska, will he respond, or does he try to go opposite and go long? He's going to keep going.
And he's got the draft from a lap car. The only thing that Dallas Pataska can do right now is lay down a qualifying lap. He is all the way empty on fuel, as light as it gets. This is what it's made of.
Let by Tulla, that's going to help him out tremendously. Lynn Kinchlow is the next one up the road, and he's not close to him. He's miraculously found this great gap in traffic because we do still have 30 cars out, so the 29 other cars out on this this very short circuit here with Dallas Pataska, and yet the racing gods have smiled upon him as behind him Ross Banfield, now that he's out, also on fresh tires, needs to go as quick as he can, and he is catching up to Stuart Elder, but looks like Elder's going to allow him by. Meanwhile, let's watch to see if we pit this time for Pataska. I honestly feel like Ozzy, he's got to commit to the complete opposite strategy, and he doesn't. He's going to go 2 laps difference.
Yeah, so he covered the cold tire laps for Ross Banfield is what he did, because Ross Banfield was on cold tires after exiting his pit stop, and then he covered those. So we might see Dallas Pataska come out ahead of Ross Banfield after this final stop. The question is, can Ross Banfield overtake him while Dallas is on cold tires? We might see some archie-barchie when it comes to that.
So a 1:08.2 on lap 131 for Dallas. And
that was the pit in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah.
So let's see what Banfield is able to do here as he gets ready to cross the line. Oh, and Pataska's out.
Jump him.
Wow, it's much, much slower. Was he saving fuel this whole time?
I think it's the... Yeah, I think it's the cold tires. I think it's the cold tires that Ross Banfield had to run effectively. I mean, saving fuel, yes, also, but cold tires as well, they made a difference. At the same time, you look at Dallas Pataska's stop, it's 4 seconds faster.
Yeah, and that's what makes me think that he maybe was just, pulling a blinder as pushing his way through the traffic. Ross Banfield can be patient no more. He shoves Baker out of the way. He's got to make up 2 seconds to catch Pataska, because as you said, it was a 4-second difference between them. I am almost certain that Dallas was just doing some lifting and coasting there.
It had to have been some good fuel save, and I mean, talk about an attitude change from the driver of the number 777, the one that was as cool as a cucumber all day long, now having to get his elbows out. Dallas Pataska also trying to squeak through the middle of that last chicane, so the race is on.
Oh, this is going to be fascinating. We have not seen Dallas lead since the very first laps of this race. Banfield has been the one that's been pushing through, leading the way, and now he's got to switch around to the reverse as, did Banfield just have a car wreck in front of him?
There was a car way off track on the exit of turn number 1, and let's catch this GSRC replay.
This cost him a little bit of time, but he did a good job. This is Elder. We'll need Gilbert, who had the big moment. So Elder had something else happen as he goes off. The 73 car, watch down into turn 1 here. Seems to just give the brake marker a complete miss, and thankfully did not run into our former leader.
That was a very, very close call here. Right on board with Ross Banfield. See exactly how close it was.
Goodbye.
I tell you what, Joe, when you're hunting down the lead, that's the last thing you expect to see.
Yeah, his focus is completely forward, so it's certainly not watching for a car behind, but he had his heads up. He gave space down to the inside. That made him a little slower, though, and he's down to 2.6 seconds. 27 laps to go. There is still definitely time for Banfield to try and run him down, but 2 lap older tires than Dallas Pataska doesn't do him any good.
My jaw is kind of on the ground right now, because what happened to Ross Banfield's pace? It used to be him running away from Pataska all the way through this race, and now all of a sudden the 23 is out front and he's doing the same.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the difference was half a second last time around, I'll be honest. And Ross Banfield had that moment he had to avoid, which surely made a difference in terms of he had to maybe brake a little bit earlier, maybe he was spooked, lost his focus for a bit. This time around, we'll see what the lap times will be here. might be that he's conserving his tires a little bit early on, trying to get them in nice and warm and even, and then charge with like 20 laps to go, because we still got effectively a full stint, and that's a response right there, top right of your screen.
Yeah, he is absolutely responding. Ross Banfield setting the fastest lap of the entire race as he goes by Gilbert again in the same corner. How did he wind up catching up to him that quickly? That was strange. And Banfield, or Pataska rather, was also responding. It was a 107.5 compared to that 107.4 that Ross did. So Dallas is also picking up the pace. And I think we're seeing them unleash what they've had this whole time and really are able to do.
It's go time for sure, and they're both on those fresh tires, so I'm not surprised to see those lap times being put down. How much can Ross afford to abuse the tires early on? It is only a 2-lap difference, but is he going to use them up trying to catch Pataska?
What an absolute chess match this race has been. And these two being as close as they've been all race long has definitely kept it alive, because the strategy shenanigans have caught us by surprise. I can only imagine Ross Banfield just a little bit shocked to see Dallas emerge just in front of him. So we watch Dallas now dealing with the traffic. This is going to help tremendously for Ross.
I was going back and looking at these lap times consistently are just so incredible, but you're right, Pataska held up huge right there. Unfortunately, Ross Banfield still 2 seconds back.
He got held up, a 108.1 for Ross, but Dallas with a 107.5. So he continues to run very fast laps. It's just Ross Banfield is not getting the good end of the stick, which is kind of counter to what we saw before. Ross seemed to really deal with the traffic a little bit better than Dallas all race long, unless that was Dallas doing that fuel saving that I was speculating a little bit before. More lap traffic in front of him once again, just holding him up. This time by, what does he have? He'll cross, and it's a 108.9, much slower for Dallas.
Yeah, and Ross put in a 107.7 behind, so the difference between traffic and clean air. Banfield bringing it back down to within 1 second as he deals with, a team car that almost he collided with.
That was Jason Wallet, who actually almost ran into Pataska as well, outbraking himself into turn 1.
Oh, and there was contact between Banfield and the car in front of him. That's number 12. And we are talking about number 12 is Gary Thomas. So there was contact exiting the corner. You saw it on the screen as well. And as a result of that, Banfield has lost 1.5 seconds at the opening course of this lap.
What a series of twists and turns, and look at him. He's just clipping the grass now. He's pushing this to the outward limits of the racetrack to try to make the most of it. Banfield is starting to show maybe a few signs of desperation, but I'd say that Pataska is too. They have just completely turned this thing on its head. It's gone from this long race of just waiting to see what's going to happen to suddenly it is all happening.
Well, and Pataska, a 107.55. That is so close to the fastest lap of the race, but you look through his last handful of laps, when he's not in traffic, he is turning 107.5s, which is right on top of his fastest pace of the race. This is unreal.
On to the backstretch, still just shy of 4 seconds between them. One of the larger margins we've seen since that pit stop. In fact, I think it is the largest margin that they've had since the final stop. 23 laps to go, which means that Banfield has got to average somewhere in the realm of about 0.2 of a second a lap just to catch him.
He's trying his best. You see him all up over the curbs, using every single piece of the racetrack that he can. They're going to come by, click it down to 22 laps to go this time by, and man, Dallas Pataska driving the wheels off it.
107.9 versus a 107.9. Oof, matching each other that time by. And I think they've seen the best of their tires at this stage. So Banfield and Dallas might not be able to really set some hot ones like they were before. And it's down to maybe managing a little bit more just to get to the finish without running out of tire by the time they get to the checkered flag. And Ross, again, watch him come out of the corner, caught up behind another lapped car.
It's almost like that Uno Reverso card has been played on Ross Banfield. He was catching the traffic at all of the right times earlier, and now he just can't seem to catch a break. And you got to wonder what's going on inside the head of that 777 when you've controlled literally the entire race, and now you find yourself in the final closing stages, and it's completely gone away from your grasp.
I'm sure that's not doing much good for his mental state out there. He's got to stay cool. He's got to focus on the driving right now. But Pataska with the upper hand, now over 4 seconds, nearly 5 seconds between himself and Ross Banfield, denying him his first win of the season. Dallas, his second win here, if he can bring this one home. Checking over with Dick Mueller in the meantime, racing Trevor Vovrosky.
This battle has continued to rage on. I'll say that Dick Mueller has kind of been up and down the order with the pit stop strategies between the 8th and 15th place position, but he has continued the charge up, trying to overtake Vovrosky down into turn number 1. Oh, although both of those cars, oh no, Vovrosky out wide. That's going to open the door for Mueller to go around the outside up into 11th.
Oh, he's going to try it. Oh, but he just can't quite get there, and he gets fed out. So Mueller will stay on the stay in position here and take that 11th spot. That's Tulla behind them, just a lap or so down from these two, so not fighting them for position. I'm sure he doesn't want to be held up anymore because he's got David Baker catching him.
It's a good pass on the racetrack. We'll see if Vovrosky can kind of take the fight back to him, but this is the closing stages of the race, Joe. Everybody's tired. The car is tired. The tires are tired. You got to reach down deep and just keep on chugging.
Well, if our audience needs a respite, we're going to take a short break. We'll come back with the final laps here of the Sandown 500. This incredible race is coming to a close soon.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Somebody, anybody, really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome back to the final laps here at the Sandown 500. The Majors round 9 has been turned on its head. Dallas Pataska is now leading for the first time since the start of this race, and he has pulled a gap of about 4.3 seconds over Banfield. There is much debate behind the scenes of what caused it, but the general consensus seems to be that the traffic played a huge part in this one, and Banfield did not get the good end of the stick, which is quite the irony, Joey, considering how it was going for him for pretty much the entire race on traffic.
Well, and he's having to deal with even more traffic right now. Check this out. Having to go side by side through the final chicane, just losing even more time to our leader, Dallas Pataska, up front. So it's just not working out well for Ross Banfield in the final quarter of the race when everything went so right the first 3 quarters.
Up and over the curbs there out of turn 1, looking down the inside. Well, are we seeing maybe Dallas now getting bit a little bit here? And of course, it's one of those UDOX cars that's not exactly pulling out of the way super quickly and just making sure he has to work his way by, and he sets off down the road. It cuts down by about half a second. It's not huge, but it's something.
Yeah, you know, and you kind of have to take anything that you can get right now if you're chasing them. So if you can count that as a win, keep on taking those chunks out, see what you can do. But right now, that the pace from Dallas Pataska is just way up there. He's continuing pace in the 107s.
All he has to do is make it 14 more laps here, and this is his race. In fact, I need to check and see where he sits on the all-time winners, because he's been definitely one that's racked them up over the years. And I believe, let's see, looks like he's had 15 wins I'm seeing so far in his majors career, which is a lot harder to come by than you would think. He slides a little bit off turn 4 with only between 11 and 13 races most seasons, and with literally the whole world trying for them. It is honestly one of the most difficult things to grab a win in, is the top split wins.
Well, and not only that, but you were touching on the different types of cars, the different racetracks that they go to. So not only do you have to be an excellent road racing driver, but off-road driver, oval driver, dirt track driver, V8 supercar driver. You have to be a master of all of them to get on top here at the majors.
Yeah, it's got to be someone who's supremely talented at wheeling a race car. And so far he's proven to be so, especially here in the V8 supercars. And is there a problem here for Jason Wallet as he gets back going, but it looks rather slow.
Out this replay, see exactly what happened to the driver of the 658. Looks like to be letting a few cars by going into the final chicane, and a little bit of rear lockup. We've seen that a couple times out of different cars. If you squeeze that brake pedal a little bit too hard with all the rear bias they're running, you can lock those rears, just like pulling the e-brake on your car.
Watching from Pataska's view now. Going to make sure that he doesn't have the same issue, but again, some of the ways that these cars pull off to the side. Last second, that was Hogg letting him through. Kevin Hill up next. Hill about to be put down a second lap. So that means only the top 5 are within 1 lap of the leaders. It's been unbelievable just how quickly Dallas and Ross have been running this race.
And my math, Mama Atterbury can double check my math over here. At the pace Pataska is running, he could go all the way up inside the top 5, putting all of those cars 2 laps down.
There is that blue and black number 23 now putting a lap on Kevin Hill, who pulls off to the side and lets him go. You're right. Wallen just up the way is definitely within reach. And as they break down into turn 6, is this what you were talking about before, maybe, Joey? Is he now also thinking the same thing that you thought maybe Ross did? I could lap as many cars as possible. That's the goal now.
I think so. I think you got to keep your mind fresh, keep thinking about new challenges ahead. Obviously, the checkered flag is the ultimate goal. That's what you want to do and go and collect. But sometimes you have a brain like mine. It's a little bit ADD over here, and you kind of look at the birds as you go by. You look at the billboards and say, oh, maybe that does look good. Maybe I'll get a case of that Penrite after this.
So 11 laps to go here for Dallas Pataska. Coming down to the end of it, we're going to check in now with Elder and Baker. Haven't looked at David Baker in quite some time. He's accrued quite a bit of damage on that car as well. I'm seeing a missing hood as Elder approaches, but he's also got Jeff Schmeier coming in there. This is all for position except for that car in front of them. Go Lightly, who's going to pull out of the way.
It does get a little confusing, especially when you have multiple white cars with no hoods on them. It gets tough to kind of differentiate everything that's going on, but Stuart Elder actually lifted to let one of the leaders by. That was Jeff Schmeier, who was a lap ahead of him, so just kind of putting himself, another car between himself and that battle.
So as we check in on Dallas, he's now reached 10 laps to go. I said this would be grueling. We've been at this for nearly 3 hours now that they've been racing. So it's been quite a long time that he's had to do nothing but focus on wheeling the car. Just for brief moments, he's been able to pull off, take a pit stop, relax for a second, and do whatever he needs to do during that minute time that he is having his crew working on the car. But otherwise, the mind has been racing just as much as the car has, and he's been leading the race now for this final stint since that last pit stop with a clear track bar these lapped cars. Here comes the next group with Wallen. It looks like Howard up in front.
And I want to put something into perspective for everybody. Dallas Pataska, his fastest lap of the race is a 107.5, okay? Out of his last 15 laps that he has logged, 4 laps have been outside the 107 range. Only 4 laps have been outside of a half a second between himself and his fastest lap of the race. That is consistency.
In traffic, too.
It's a good point. He hasn't just been out there cruising, doing his own thing. He's had to go by multiple cars, and that includes lapping 5th place. So that's a driver that's very close on pace to him, as Pataska now goes by Howard just around the outside of turn 4. Next on his list is Wallen. So will he catch him in these 9 laps? He's got about less than a second, I'd say, up to him.
Oh, he's definitely going to get him, and I think Oliver Wallen doesn't really have a whole lot to fight for in terms of what Dallas Pataska is doing. So I have a feeling come the front straightaway here, you're going to see Wallen give way to our leader.
Down into the braking zone, once again switching back and forth through the final chicane. Wallen a little bit far behind Shelley, about 6 seconds. That's going to be tough for him to catch him in these few of laps. And Kevin Hill only behind him by about 3.5. So yes, Wallen probably more in rear guard mode than anything, rather than trying to attack. So how hard will he try and fight to stay 1 lap down, which is kind of a pointless stat at this stage. And here we go. He's caught him on the back stretch. Will he pull off to the side?
I think that Pataska will be able to get by relatively easy. Now Wallen pulls off to driver's left. He's not lifting off of the throttle quite yet. Now he's off of the gas, letting our leader go by. And Ozzy, I know that I wasn't going to talk to you anymore here in the broadcast, but I do want to talk to you one more time. Is there anybody that you see out there that could potentially run out of fuel before this thing's over?
Well, you look at the stint lengths at the moment, and there's a couple of guys who still have to make a stop. They are quite a bit down tow. So I'm looking at Howard's gonna make it. Wolf Dietrich Hotho is not gonna make it. They're gonna have to come into the pit one more time. Same for Jason Wallet. That's a might be also needing to come into the pit lane very, very soon. In fact, it's looking at 44. So a 44 lap stint. Anyone else? Nobody in the top 20, let's put it that way.
So with these drivers so spread out at this stage, it might be down to that fuel strategy. If anybody did short fuel it a little bit too much. Wallen and Milwain are on the longest stints right now, but as long as they put enough in, they should be comfortably within the window to be able to get to the end. The gap to Banfield is growing for those who are curious. There you can see 5.5 seconds now. Ross has not been able to respond. Dallas continues to just scamper away.
It's got to be a tough place to be inside that race car of the number 777 right now, because we were mentioning it earlier. He doesn't have a win here this season in the majors and controlled the entire part of this race. And now not only is Pataska in front, about to claim a win, but he's continuing to run away. The second place is a great finish. It provides you great points, but I don't think that's the result that Ross Banfield wants today.
Well, and remember, he came in behind Dallas in the points. So second place is great, but he's behind the driver that he needs to catch, because Dallas should take the points lead after this round. Ozzy Milwain, who we've been trying to keep track of with his alternate strategy, sitting in 7th. Looks like he's going to lose out to Ross, though. So that will be the positive on that side. It's just a question of if it'll be enough points for him to jump ahead into 2nd or 3rd in the championship. So here's Oliver Wallen as well, now on lap 36 of his stint, with 6 more laps to go. That'll be plenty within the margins of what's possible in these cars.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you dug up some stats here on Oliver Wallen. This is pretty impressive out of this driver.
It is, because he's making his majors debut. It's his first race in the majors ever in this, and I had to double check this. Because statistics are always statistics and not always exactly reliable. But this is in fact his first start in the series, and he is running in 5th place already. And we know what a tough series this is. You look at established veterans, both in front of him, Pataska, Banfield, Vervaien, Shelley, but also behind him. Kevin Hill, Ozzy Milwain, we've seen them throughout the season. Ozzy Milwain is a 2-time race winner this season, and he's running ahead of him. Running ahead of guys like Gargaro as well. So that's a very, very impressive debut for Mr. Oliver Wallen, and I hope we're going to see a lot more of them as the seasons progress and as this season progresses as well.
I checked because I was curious if maybe Wallen was we get specialists sometimes for these cars, which is understandable. You want to see how you compete against everybody else, with this being your focus. And Wallen is not from Australia, so he might be a specialist here, but he hails from Club Scandinavia, which to me says probably not. Even still, it's probably a region where it'll help him be prepared for dealing with these cars. Meanwhile, look at the traffic that poor Dallas is dealing with.
Yeah, this is trying to get by the 44 now of Lynn Kinchlow. They also just went by another lapped car, but Dallas Pataska has built a 6+ second lead. He can afford to maybe kind of lift off in some of these situations, but I think the racing driver mode is firmly on with this number 23.
Yeah, I agree. He does not want to dilly-dally here. 6 seconds. All it takes is a spin or someone tipping him around with something that isn't his fault, and Banfield's through, so he has to stay on it. He has to make sure that he gets himself past these lapped cars and is able to pull away. 4 laps to go now. It's been a long race, 161 laps total to reach the checkered flag around this circuit. And there you go. There's a car making contact as that was go lightly, just getting a little bit too far to the outside, and looked like Dallas could not react in time.
Yeah, just a little bit of contact sent that white car of Golightly spinning, and now it's going to be Dallas Pataska going by the number 32 on the racetrack, and now he can breathe a little bit cleaner. about 2.5 laps left remaining here in this grueling 500-kilometer race.
Good news is Go Lightly's still running. We still have 30. We haven't lost anybody since Matt Gelder. Remember, we mentioned that 60 incident limit. Only one driver has fallen victim to that so far that I have witnessed. Everybody else still going. Good to see on that front, especially considering the amount of contact that we did see early on in the race. Meanwhile, Pataska on board, crosses the line. 3 to go now, still hovering at about 5.5 seconds over Ross Banfield, but both of them a full lap ahead of Stephen Verweyen.
Yeah, just got to get around this racetrack a couple more times is all these drivers have to do. I'm sure that every single one of them is looking forward to seeing that white flag pop up and then eventually that checkered flag complete this race. I mean, we've been going at it 3 hours already and we're just sitting over here commentating. I can't imagine how these drivers feel right now.
Exhausted, no doubt. And actually down to 2 laps to go, on our counter. So he's going to get the white flag this time by. And he's got Travis Henderson in front of him. Looks like that's Ed Shelley. That's the next car to be lapped. Can he catch him in time? Tom Dreiling pulls out of the way and lets him through. And as they come through the final chicane, Shelley could shorten this by 1 lap and put himself in a good spot. Will he decide to? There it is, white flag for our leader.
Dallas Pataska, 1 lap to go, just has to navigate around Travis Henderson. Has lost a little bit of time to Ross Banfield, and now Travis Henderson goes off right in front of our leader. That's the last thing you want to deal with on the white flag lap.
It ain't over until that checkered flag is given to Pataska. He's got to stay out of trouble. They're ahead of him. The car in 4th place, only the podium finishing within 1 lap of the leader if he manages to go by him. Unless Shelley wants to fight him for this. Looks like Wallen and Hill are going to be fighting for a position behind them, so we'll have to watch closely to see if that 5th place is going to change hands by the time we finish here. Down into the braking for turn 9. Not much left to go for Dallas Pataska. What a fantastic race. He had the speed, he had the strategy as well, and he had the patience overall. Didn't need to lead most of this one because he's led the most important lap. The last one, a win for Pataska in the Sandown 500.
Congratulations to that driver right there, to the number 23. Spent most of the time in 2nd place, and then ultimately the undercut got him the lead. Watch this battle as Kevin Hill comes across the line to finish in that 6th place just behind Oliver Wallen.
0.2 of a second between them after 500 kilometers. That is very tight. Everybody else now drifting across the line. Looks like we're only going to see the top 8 within 2 laps down to tell you just how fast they were racing up at the front. So while the 23 gets ready to celebrate, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews, so stick around.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Somebody, anybody, really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome back to Sandown after 500 kilometers. It is Dallas Pataska taking the win, and he burns it down there on the front stretch in celebration. It was a mere 6 seconds between himself and Banfield at the finish line, with the only two of those drivers finishing all 500 kilometers. Vervaen rounds out the podium in third, a lap down. Edward Shelley was fourth, then Oliver Wallen in P5, and Kevin Hill sixth. Ozzie Milwane from 23rd to 7th with his alternate strategy. Worked out decently well. I'm not sure that it got him the position maybe that he wanted, though. David Gagaro Jr. was 8th, and Dennis Cole 9th, with Tom Guest rounding out the top 10. Joey?
Then we have our biggest mover up 23 positions. That is Dick Mueller, driver of the number 47, to finish in the 11th place position, albeit 3 laps down. Trevor Vavrovsky is going to come home in 12th. Jeff Schmeier, 13th. Travis Henderson in 14th. Hokenschot in 15th place. Gary Thomas, 16th. Thor Tula in 17th. David Baker in 18th. Lynn Kinchlow in 19th. And Stuart Elder back here in 20th, Ozzy.
Yep, and in 21st we got Joseph Holman ahead of Jason Wallet and Daniel Howard. You got Adam Preston in 24th, Wolf Dietrich Chotho in 25th, and Mike Golightly in 26th, ahead of Tom Dreiling, Patrick Kopp, Michael Hogg, and Gerard Gilbert. I enjoy how those names rhyme. And last but not least, Matt Gelder, Jeff Cardamone, Rob Courtney, and then Carl Borg, who never started this race, as it seems, but a man who started this race and a man who finished this race as well is with Joe Peak up at our interview position. Joe?
Yes, Dallas Pataska taking the win. Dallas, you'll have to settle a discussion that we had over the last stint of this race. Did you save fuel to have that short stop, or did you just short fuel it?
I'd say I short fueled it and then I made it work. I noticed that with all the traffic and everything, my number was getting really, really close. And I thought, you know, Ross had great pace all day. I don't think I was going to just run up to him and pass him straight up. So I figured if I was going to win, it was going to be in the pits. And that's what happened. So, yeah, I was saving, but it wasn't anything severe. I think I was only lifting into like 7 and 1. So that's about all I had for that.
That makes it hugely impressive if you cut it a little tight there, because you were still within 1/10 of a second of the fastest lap of the race on that last stint. It seemed like it all came down to that last stint. Did you kind of anticipate that's what it was going to be to decide it between you and Ross?
I had known pretty early on that, like, it was pretty obvious that we were even, and pace-wise, the only thing really dictating the gaps was traffic, which is a discussion for a different day, but it was all right. I knew that it was probably going to come down to the last stop, but I didn't think there was going to be any sort of overlap because Ross and I were so close the entire time. I had started to kind of feel safe a little bit riding behind him because I wasn't going to be able to go out and make a pass, and every time I looked, I could tell that he wanted to keep the lead. So I knew that there was going to be something. It was just I didn't know what. And then when he ducked in like 2 or 3 laps before I did, I knew it was on from then because we had a lot of clean air in front of me. It was hammer down time and just have a good, well-executed stop with slightly shortened fuel. Hope for the best with some traffic to help on that end, and it came through.
And lastly, 2 cars on the lead lap, only 4 cars within 1 lap of you. Well, including you, really. How in the world are you guys this fast?
I'd say a lot of it's just experience. I drive a lot. I don't drive V8 supercars specifically, but I have a lot of experience with NASCAR stuff on road. A lot of stuff that translates similarly to these cars. Obviously, there's nothing that exactly like these. But yeah, I mean, this isn't the first long V8 supercar event that I've ran. I've ran the Bathurst 500 or 1,000 a few times, the team one, and I know we've done the solo one here in majors, or something similar to it. So I have some experience in it. I know Ross is really good with these types of cars too. I think he drives a lot of Porsche Cups, so I'm not surprised he was fast at all. He always has good pace. So I think a lot of it comes down to experience and then just having the wherewithal not to overdo it in such a long race.
Well, again, just can't tell you how impressed we were with both the strategy and the racing itself. Congratulations on win number 16 in the majors.
Thanks, guys.
Dallas Pataska, your victor here today at Sandown. And I believe Joey has caught up with the man that was chasing him, Ross Banfield.
Yeah, Ross Banfield, a little bit bittersweet, but congratulations on the second place today.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It was a really hard race. I knew it was from Dallas's queue time that it was going to be close. I didn't expect it to be that close. I mean, I guess the silver lining is that I lost due to pit strategy. Crew chief versus iRacing. I thought that iRacing would override crew chief, but it didn't. And so crew chief put in an extra 2 gallons, which in this car was the nail in the coffin.
It seems like that light fuel load really helps accelerate those lap times, but I got to ask you, that last stint, after being in control nearly 3/4 of the entire race, did you feel it just kind of slipping out of your grips, or did you feel like you still had a fight to go give?
I felt like I had a fight to give until I'd say like the second lap after Dallas came out. I got caught behind traffic and it went from a 2-second gap to a 5-second gap. And that's when I knew it was kind of done. There's no way I was going to close in on Dallas with as close as we've been time-wise that race. There was definitely hope until the end, but I realized I messed up when he came out of the pits with like 2 seconds ahead.
Well, yeah, a little bit unfortunate with the missed strategy call there, but you just completed 500 kilometers here at Sandown. What's your big overall takeaway from this?
Yeah, I never want to do this again. I think it would have been good as a 250 race. Mentally, it is exhausting. You have to drive at like 8 or 9 tenths the entire time. So you drive at 10 tenths, you're just going to make mistakes. Traffic was a huge thing here. It felt like a lot of giving and taking, but sometimes it felt like a lot more taking than others. It was just a little bit chaotic out there, to say the least.
Well, Ross, congratulations on that second place.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you for coming out and racing. That was the driver of the number 777, Joe.
It looks like that's going to end our interviews. But before we go, a mention of our sponsors and charities once again. The Majors Garage, home of free Baseline Plus setups. And if you use our special discount code MajorsGSRC, you'll get 10% off. Click our link in the description below, as well as if you want to check out more about the charity Beyond Blue, we also have a link in the description below for them. Thanks to the team today, Joey, Ozzy, Ryan, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media, our website, and our merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment. The next race going to be the Holly Farms 400, Sunday, October 22nd, 11:45 a.m. Eastern. So we're off to the 87 Cup cars. I love when the majors race these things. Be sure to check out our other broadcasts because we've got one more show today. The Rolling Thunder Series starts up with their opening round at Daytona at 8:15 p.m. Eastern. However, until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.